Did you know that Family Guy was actually dead and buried for 3 entire years? And that the show you're watching today only exists because of DVD sales and something called Adult Swim? If you think you know everything about the Griffin family, you're about to discover some mind-blowing secrets that will completely change how you see this animated masterpiece. What I'm about to tell you goes way deeper than just random trivia. We're talking about hidden connections to other shows, real-world controversies that almost destroyed careers, and creative decisions that were so controversial they had to be completely rewritten. Some of these facts are so bizarre that even die-hard fans have never heard them. Let's start with something that will blow your mind. Family Guy didn't just get canceled once, it got canceled twice. But here's where it gets really interesting. The first cancellation happened after just 2 seasons because Fox executives thought the humor was too edgy and the ratings weren't strong enough. Seth MacFarlane was devastated, but he had no idea that this cancellation would actually make the show more popular than it had ever been while it was on the air. Here's what happened during those dark years. Adult Swim picked up the reruns and started airing them late at night. Something magical occurred. The show found its true audience. College students and young adults were staying up late, discovering this irreverent animated comedy that pushed every boundary imaginable. The ratings on Adult Swim were phenomenal. Meanwhile, DVD sales were going through the roof. People weren't just buying the DVDs, they were buying multiple copies to give as gifts. Fox executives started paying attention when they realized they were sitting on a gold mine. The show they had thrown away was generating more buzz and making more money in reruns than most of their current programming. This led to one of the most unprecedented decisions in television history. In 2005, Fox brought Family Guy back from the dead, making it the first canceled primetime series to be revived due to DVD sales and cable reruns. But the resurrection came with a price. Seth MacFarlane had moved on. He was working on other projects and wasn't sure he wanted to return to the world of Peter Griffin. Fox had to offer him an incredibly lucrative deal, including creative control and the promise to produce 2 additional animated series. This is how we eventually got American Dad and The Cleveland Show. Now let's talk about something that will make you see Stewie Griffin in a completely different light. The character was originally designed to be much more evil and sinister. In early episodes, Stewie was genuinely trying to kill Lois and take over the world. But something interesting happened as the show evolved. Seth MacFarlane and the writers began to soften Stewie's character, making him more of a sophisticated intellectual trapped in a baby's body rather than a genuine psychopath. This transformation wasn't accidental. MacFarlane has revealed that Stewie's character development was influenced by his own experiences and observations about childhood intelligence. The writers began to explore the idea that Stewie's apparent evil tendencies were actually the result of a brilliant mind struggling to communicate in a world that couldn't understand him. This is why later episodes show Stewie as more emotionally vulnerable and seeking connection rather than domination. Here's something that might disturb you about the show's research process. The writers of Family Guy have one of the most extensive research teams in television. They don't just make random pop culture references. Every joke, every cutaway, every cultural reference is carefully researched and fact-checked. The team maintains massive databases of information about celebrities, historical events, movies, music, and current events. This is why their parodies are so accurate and cutting. But this attention to detail has gotten them into serious trouble. The show has faced numerous lawsuits from celebrities and public figures who felt they were portrayed unfairly or inaccurately. Some of these legal battles have cost the production millions of dollars. In several cases, entire episodes had to be re-edited or pulled from circulation to avoid further legal complications. One of the most controversial moments in Family Guy history involves a joke that predicted a real tragedy. In a 2013 episode, there was a sequence involving bombs and the Boston Marathon. When the actual Boston Marathon bombing occurred just weeks after the episode aired, conspiracy theorists went crazy. They claimed the show had inside knowledge of the attack. The truth is much simpler but equally disturbing. It was a coincidence, but it highlighted how the show's edgy humor sometimes intersects with real-world events in uncomfortable ways. The production process of Family Guy is unlike any other animated show. While most animated series take months to produce each episode, Family Guy operates on an incredibly tight schedule that requires episodes to be completed in just a few weeks. This is possible because of their unique production pipeline that allows multiple episodes to be in different stages of production simultaneously. Seth MacFarlane's involvement in the show has changed dramatically over the years. While he still provides the voices for multiple characters including Peter, Brian, and Stewie, he's much less involved in the day-to-day writing and production. This transition happened gradually as MacFarlane became more interested in live-action projects and music career. Many fans don't realize that some of their favorite recent episodes were created with minimal input from the show's original creator. The voice acting process reveals some fascinating secrets about the characters. Seth MacFarlane records Peter Griffin's voice by speaking in a lower register than his natural voice, which sometimes causes strain during long recording sessions. For Stewie, he uses a combination of his natural speaking voice with a refined English accent that he developed specifically for the character. Brian's voice is actually closest to MacFarlane's real speaking voice, which is why their conversations often feel the most natural. Here's something that will change how you watch the show forever. Many of the cutaway gags that seem completely random are actually connected to larger storylines that were planned but never fully developed. The writers keep extensive notes about potential character backstories and plot developments. Sometimes these ideas surface as quick cutaway jokes instead of full episodes. This means that seemingly throwaway gags might actually be glimpses into alternative versions of the show that could have existed. The relationship between Family Guy and The Simpsons is much more complex than the surface-level rivalry that fans discuss. Behind the scenes, there's actually a great deal of mutual respect between the creative teams. Several writers and animators have worked on both shows, and there are numerous hidden references and inside jokes that acknowledge this connection. The famous crossover episode took years to develop because both teams wanted to ensure they honored each other's creative legacy. The show's impact on popular culture extends far beyond just entertainment. Family Guy has influenced internet meme culture in ways that are still being discovered. The show's rapid-fire reference style and willingness to break the fourth wall helped establish many of the comedic conventions that now dominate social media and online content. Phrases and concepts from the show have entered everyday language in ways that most people don't even realize. One of the most closely guarded secrets about Family Guy involves the process of celebrity guest appearances. The show has featured hundreds of celebrity voices over the years, but the selection process is incredibly strategic. The producers maintain detailed profiles of celebrities, including their sense of humor, willingness to make fun of themselves, and potential controversy factors. Some major stars have turned down appearances because they weren't comfortable with how they might be portrayed. The animation style of Family Guy appears simple, but it's actually incredibly sophisticated. The character designs are deliberately simplified to allow for rapid production, but the background art and scene composition often contain incredible detail that viewers miss during casual watching. The animators hide visual jokes and references in backgrounds that are only visible when episodes are paused or watched at high definition. The show's relationship with censorship has evolved dramatically over the years. Early episodes pushed boundaries that would be considered tame by today's standards, while recent episodes deal with topics that would have been completely forbidden when the show began. This evolution reflects changing cultural attitudes, but it also shows how the creative team has learned to work within and around broadcasting restrictions. Family Guy's influence on other animated shows is immeasurable. The success of its revival proved that adult animated comedies could be viable long-term properties. This directly led to the creation or continuation of shows like Rick and Morty, Bob's Burgers, and numerous others. The show essentially saved the entire genre of primetime adult animation. The merchandising empire built around Family Guy generates hundreds of millions of dollars annually, but most of this success comes from international markets rather than domestic sales. The show's humor translates surprisingly well across cultural boundaries, making it one of the most globally successful American animated properties ever created. Behind the scenes, the show operates more like a comedy writer's room than a traditional animation studio. The collaborative process involves dozens of writers, animators, and producers working together to create each episode. Ideas can come from anywhere, and the best concepts often emerge from casual conversations rather than formal brainstorming sessions. The legacy of Family Guy extends far beyond entertainment into academic study. Universities now offer courses that analyze the show's cultural impact, comedic techniques, and social commentary. The show has become a legitimate subject of scholarly research in fields ranging from media studies to sociology. As we look toward the future, Family Guy continues to evolve while maintaining the irreverent spirit that made it a cultural phenomenon. The show that once faced cancellation has become an institution, proving that sometimes the most unexpected successes come from taking creative risks and refusing to compromise your vision. Whether you love it or hate it, Family Guy has fundamentally changed television comedy forever. These hidden aspects of its creation and evolution reveal a complex, carefully crafted entertainment machine that continues to surprise and provoke audiences worldwide. The next time you watch an episode, you'll see it through completely different eyes, understanding the incredible journey that brought these characters from cancellation to global cultural dominance. Did you know that Family Guy was actually canceled twice, and that Seth MacFarlane almost died in the September 11th attacks but missed his flight because of a hangover? And that's just scratching the surface of the absolutely wild behind-the-scenes stories that most people have never heard about this iconic show. What's up, everyone, and welcome back to the channel, where we dive deep into the hidden secrets of your favorite shows. Today, we're exploring some absolutely mind-blowing Family Guy lore that even die-hard fans probably don't know about. Trust me, by the end of this video, you'll never look at Peter Griffin the same way again. But before we jump into these crazy stories, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because we're constantly dropping content about your favorite animated series that you won't find anywhere else. And if you're a true Family Guy fan, drop a chicken fight emoji in the comments right now. Let's start with something that literally changed the course of television history. Seth MacFarlane was supposed to be on American Airlines Flight 11 on September 11, 2001, the same flight that crashed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center. The only reason he wasn't on that plane was because he had been out drinking the night before and overslept, missing his flight by just 15 minutes. MacFarlane has talked about this in interviews, describing how his travel agent called him frantically when she realized what had happened. Can you imagine how different the world of animation would be today if he had made that flight? No Family Guy revival, no American Dad, no The Orville. It's one of those sliding doors moments that completely altered entertainment history. Speaking of near-death experiences, did you know that Family Guy has been canceled not once, but twice? The show originally ran from 1999 to 2002 before Fox pulled the plug due to declining ratings. But here's where it gets interesting. The show found new life through DVD sales and reruns on Cartoon Network's Adult Swim block. The DVD sales were absolutely unprecedented for an animated series at the time. We're talking about millions of copies sold, which was unheard of for a canceled TV show. Adult Swim's late-night reruns were pulling in massive audiences, often outperforming the original Fox broadcasts. The demand became so overwhelming that Fox had no choice but to bring the show back in 2005. But the cancellation drama didn't end there. In 2007, Fox canceled the show again, this time after Season 5. Once again, fan outcry and continued strong performance in syndication forced the network's hand, and they renewed it for a 6th season. It's pretty incredible when you think about it. Family Guy might be the only show in television history to be saved by its fans twice. Now, let's talk about some character secrets that will blow your mind. Stewie Griffin's sexuality has been a topic of debate for years. But Seth MacFarlane actually revealed in interviews that Stewie was originally conceived as a completely straight character who would eventually grow up to be a normal heterosexual adult. The gay undertones that fans picked up on were never intentionally written into the character initially. However, MacFarlane later embraced the ambiguity and has said that Stewie exists in a kind of pre-sexual state where his eventual orientation is deliberately left unclear. This explains why sometimes Stewie seems attracted to women, sometimes to men, and sometimes to neither. It's a fascinating example of how a character can evolve beyond their creator's original intentions. Here's something that might surprise you about Brian Griffin. He was almost killed off permanently way before that infamous Thanksgiving episode where he actually died temporarily. In the early seasons, there were multiple discussions about removing Brian from the show entirely because some writers felt his character was becoming too preachy and unlikable. The writers experimented with making Brian more flawed and hypocritical to balance out his intellectual pretensions, which is why we see him become increasingly alcoholic and self-absorbed as the series progresses. This character development wasn't accidental. It was a deliberate attempt to make him more interesting and less of a mouthpiece for liberal talking points. Let's dive into some voice acting secrets that most people don't know about. Seth MacFarlane voices 4 main characters: Peter, Brian, Stewie, and Glenn Quagmire. Seth, but he also voices dozens of minor characters throughout the series. However, there are some characters he refuses to voice himself. For example, MacFarlane has stated that he deliberately doesn't voice any of the female characters because he believes women should voice female characters whenever possible. This is why actors like Alex Borstein voice Lois and Mila Kunis voices Meg. It's a surprisingly progressive stance for a show that often gets criticized for its treatment of female characters. Speaking of Meg, here's some dark lore about America's least favorite animated teenager. The character was originally supposed to be much more popular and central to the show's dynamic. In early concept art and scripts, Meg was portrayed as a typical popular high school girl who would serve as the voice of reason in the Griffin family. However, the writers quickly discovered that it was much funnier to make her the family scapegoat and punching bag. What started as occasional jokes about Meg being unpopular gradually evolved into the running gag where literally everyone treats her terribly. The writers have admitted that they sometimes feel bad about how mean the show is to Meg, but the jokes are just too funny to stop. Here's a piece of lore that connects to real-world tragedy. The show has made several references to Conway Twitty, the country singer, usually by cutting away to him performing full songs as a way to pad the episode runtime. These cutaway gags became a running joke about lazy writing and time filling. However, there's a darker story behind this. Conway Twitty died in 1993, years before Family Guy even existed. Seth MacFarlane has revealed that the Conway Twitty gags were actually inspired by his own father's love of the singer's music. MacFarlane's father would play Conway Twitty songs constantly when Seth was growing up, and the extended musical cutaways were a way of honoring that memory, while also poking fun at television's tendency to use musical performances as filler. Let's talk about some episodes that almost didn't make it to air. The episode titled Partial Terms of Endearment was actually banned from broadcast television entirely. The episode deals with abortion and surrogate pregnancy in typical Family Guy fashion, but the content was deemed too controversial for Fox's standards. The episode was completely finished and was supposed to air during Season 8, but Fox refused to broadcast it. It was eventually included on the DVD release and made available online, but it remains the only Family Guy episode that has never aired on television in the United States. The controversy surrounding this episode led to stricter content guidelines for the show going forward. Here's something about the show's animation that most people never notice. In the early seasons, the animation style was much more crude and simple, partly due to budget constraints, but also because of the technology available at the time. However, if you watch closely, you'll notice that the animation quality suddenly improves dramatically around Season 4. This wasn't just because of increased budget, it was because the show switched animation studios. The original episodes were animated by a small studio that specialized in low-budget television animation. When the show was revived, Fox invested in higher quality animation produced by a different studio with more advanced technology and techniques. But here's the weird part. Some fans actually prefer the cruder animation style of the early episodes. They argue that the rougher animation gave the show more character and charm. The newer episodes, while technically superior, sometimes feel too polished and corporate compared to the scrappy early seasons. Let's explore some celebrity connections that might surprise you. Patrick Stewart, who voices baby Susie Swanson, actually improvises most of his lines. The writers typically give him a basic outline of what the character needs to say, but Stewart adds his own Shakespearean flair to every line reading. Stewart has said in interviews that voicing a baby character allows him to explore comedy in ways that his serious dramatic roles don't permit. He's also revealed that he often comes up with the most outrageous and inappropriate lines for baby Susie, pushing the boundaries of what the censors will allow. Here's some lore about the show's most controversial episodes. The episode where Brian and Stewie are trapped in a bank vault together for the entire episode was actually written as a bottle episode to save money on animation and voice acting. However, it ended up becoming one of the most critically acclaimed episodes in the show's history. The writers have revealed that they were initially worried the episode would be boring since it only featured 2 characters in one location for the entire runtime. But the episode's success proved that the show worked best when it focused on character development and dialogue rather than just rapid-fire jokes and cutaway gags. Speaking of experimental episodes, did you know that the show has done several episodes that exist in alternate universes or different time periods? These aren't just random creative choices. They're actually part of a larger multiverse concept that the writers have been quietly building throughout the series. The writers have hinted that all of these alternate reality episodes are connected, and that there's a larger mythology about parallel dimensions that runs throughout the show. Most fans don't pick up on these connections because they're subtle and spread across multiple seasons, but dedicated viewers have started mapping out the multiverse timeline. Here's something about the show's music that most people don't realize. Seth MacFarlane is actually a trained singer and musician who has released several albums of standards and jazz music. Many of the musical numbers in Family Guy feature MacFarlane's actual singing voice, not just his character voices. MacFarlane has said that he uses Family Guy as a way to showcase different musical styles and pay homage to classic American songwriting. Some of the show's most elaborate musical sequences were specifically designed to highlight MacFarlane's vocal abilities and his love of traditional pop music. But here's the interesting part. MacFarlane has also revealed that he sometimes writes entire episodes around songs he wants to perform. The plot becomes secondary to the musical numbers, which explains why some episodes feel like they're structured more like variety shows than traditional sitcoms. Let's talk about some behind-the-scenes drama that most fans don't know about. There have been several major conflicts between the voice actors over the years, particularly regarding salary negotiations and creative control. The most significant dispute involved Mila Kunis, who voices Meg. During Season 7, there were reports that Kunis was considering leaving the show due to disagreements about her character's treatment and her compensation compared to other cast members. The situation was eventually resolved, but it led to changes in how Meg was written in subsequent seasons. Here's some dark lore about the show's influence on real-world events. Several episodes of Family Guy have been accused of predicting or inspiring real-world tragedies. The most notable example is an Innuendo episode that aired before the Boston Marathon bombing that featured Peter accidentally detonating bombs in Boston. The episode was pulled from reruns and streaming services after the bombing, and some conspiracy theorists claimed that the show somehow predicted the attack. Seth MacFarlane has addressed these claims, explaining that they're purely coincidental and that the show's writers don't have any special knowledge of future events. However, this incident led to increased scrutiny of the show's content and more careful consideration of how certain jokes and storylines might be interpreted in different contexts. Here's something about the show's international versions that might surprise you. Family Guy has been adapted for television in several different countries, and each version makes significant changes to accommodate local culture and censorship standards. The most interesting adaptation is probably the Arabic version, which removes all alcohol references, changes Brian from a dog to a cat, and significantly tones down the sexual humor. These changes are so extensive that the show becomes almost unrecognizable compared to the American version. As we wrap up this deep dive into Family Guy lore, it's clear that there's so much more to this show than meets the eye. From near-death experiences that changed television history to hidden multiverses and banned episodes, Family Guy has one of the richest and most complex backstories in animated television. These behind-the-scenes stories remind us that even our favorite comedies have real human drama and complexity behind them. The next time you watch Family Guy, you'll hopefully have a new appreciation for all the creative decisions, controversies, and coincidences that shape the show we know today. If you enjoyed learning about these hidden Family Guy secrets, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into your favorite shows. What other animated series would you like us to explore? Next, let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next video, where we uncover even more secrets from the world of animation. Did you know that Family Guy was actually dead and buried for 3 entire years? And when it came back from the grave, it changed television forever in ways you probably never realized? Stick around, because what I'm about to tell you about the hidden depths of Family Guy will completely change how you see this seemingly simple cartoon. Most people think Family Guy is just random jokes and cutaway gags. But there's a secret layer of storytelling, hidden references, and behind-the-scenes drama that would make your head spin. From secret government conspiracies to real-world tragedies that shaped entire episodes, this show has more dark secrets than you might imagine. Let's start with something that sounds like a conspiracy theory but is absolutely true. Family Guy predicted major world events with scary accuracy. And I'm not talking about lucky guesses. We're talking about specific details that aired months or even years before they actually happened in real life. Remember the episode where Peter accidentally damages a bridge? That episode aired in 2005, showing a bridge collapse in remarkable detail. Less than 2 years later, the Minneapolis bridge collapse happened in almost identical circumstances. Coincidence? Maybe. But wait, there's more. The show also depicted airport security scenarios that became reality after major policy changes. Episodes showing specific security procedures aired before those exact procedures were implemented in real airports. Either Seth MacFarlane is a time traveler, or the writers were paying very close attention to patterns most people missed. But here's where it gets really weird. The show once depicted a very specific type of terrorist attack involving planes, and this aired before certain real-world events that I can't get too detailed about without this video getting demonetized. The point is, Family Guy wasn't just making random jokes about current events. They were somehow tapping into the collective unconscious of what was coming next. Now let's talk about the show's death and resurrection, because this story is wilder than any episode plot. Family Guy was canceled in 2002 after just 3 seasons. Fox executives thought it was done forever, but here's what they didn't expect. The DVD sales went absolutely insane. People were buying Family Guy DVDs like crazy, and more importantly, Adult Swim started running reruns that pulled in massive ratings. Fox realized they had made a huge mistake. The show wasn't just popular. It was building a cult following that was growing stronger every day it was off the air. When Family Guy came back in 2005, something had fundamentally changed. The writers knew they had been given a second chance, and they went absolutely wild with it. The humor got darker, the references got more obscure, and they started breaking the fourth wall in ways that no animated show had ever done before. But here's the part that most fans don't know. The cancellation and resurrection created a split personality within the show itself. There's pre-cancellation Family Guy and post-cancellation Family Guy, and they're almost like 2 different shows entirely. Pre-cancellation Family Guy was more grounded. Sure, it was weird, but the characters felt like real people with real problems. Post-cancellation Family Guy became something else entirely. It became a commentary on television itself. A show that was constantly aware it was a show. This shift created what television historians now call the meta-revolution. Family Guy showed other animated shows that you could break every rule, reference your own existence, and make fun of the very network that pays you and still be successful. South Park, Rick and Morty, and countless other shows followed this blueprint. Speaking of breaking rules, let's talk about the episodes that almost didn't make it to air. There's a whole vault of Family Guy content that was deemed too controversial, too dark, or too legally problematic to broadcast. Some of these episodes have become legendary among fans who have never seen them. One infamous episode dealt with a real-world tragedy in such a specific way that it would have caused massive backlash. The episode was fully animated, voiced, and scored, but it was pulled at the last minute. Only a handful of people have ever seen it, and they're bound by non-disclosure agreements. Another banned episode featured a storyline that involved real political figures in scenarios that would have caused international incidents. The legal department shut it down so hard that even mentioning specific details could result in lawsuits. But here's what's fascinating about these banned episodes. They showed just how far Seth MacFarlane and his team were willing to push boundaries. They weren't just making a cartoon. They were conducting social experiments to see what society would tolerate. This brings us to one of the most interesting aspects of Family Guy lore: the show's relationship with censorship and standards. Every episode that makes it to air represents hundreds of battles fought behind the scenes between the writers and network executives. The writers developed an elaborate system for getting controversial content past the censors. They would intentionally include material they knew would be rejected, so that when they fought to keep the stuff they really wanted, it would seem reasonable by comparison. It's psychological warfare disguised as comedy writing. This strategy works so well that other shows started copying it. The Family Guy approach to dealing with censorship became the industry standard for pushing boundaries on television. Now let's dive into the character origins, because the backstories of these characters are way darker and more complex than you'd expect from a comedy show. Peter Griffin wasn't always the lovable idiot we know today. In early concept art and scripts, he was genuinely disturbing, almost psychopathic in his behavior. The writers had to gradually soften Peter's character because test audiences found him genuinely unlikable. But traces of that original darker Peter still show up in certain episodes, creating this weird cognitive dissonance where you're laughing at someone who, if you really think about it, should probably be in prison. Stewie's character evolution is even more interesting. He was originally conceived as a pure villain, a baby bent on world domination with no redeeming qualities. But as the show progressed, the writers started exploring what would make a baby want to destroy everything, and they discovered something profound about childhood trauma and family dynamics. The gradual softening of Stewie from villain to complex character represents one of the most sophisticated character development arcs in television comedy. But it happened so slowly that most viewers didn't even notice it was happening. Brian's character might be the most tragic of all. He represents the writer's own struggles with depression, alcoholism, and the feeling of being trapped in a life that doesn't match your dreams. Every time Brian has an existential crisis, it's the writers working through their own psychological issues on screen. This is why Brian's temporary death hit fans so hard. It wasn't just killing off a character, it was the writers symbolically killing off the part of themselves that they saw in Brian. When they brought him back, it represented their own decision to keep fighting through depression and creative frustration. The show's relationship with its own success is another layer of complexity that most fans miss. Family Guy became so popular that it started influencing real-world culture, but this success created a feedback loop that began changing the show itself. References to Family Guy started showing up in other TV shows, movies, and even news broadcasts. Politicians started making Family Guy references in speeches. The show went from commenting on culture to actually shaping culture, and this shift is reflected in the later seasons. The writers became increasingly aware that they were creating cultural touchstones, and this awareness changed how they approached comedy. Jokes that might have been throwaway gags in early seasons became carefully crafted cultural commentary in later seasons. This evolution created what media scholars call the recursive effect, where a piece of media becomes so influential that it starts commenting on its own influence. Family Guy didn't just break the fourth wall, it demolished the entire theater. Let's talk about the real-world consequences of Family Guy's cultural impact. The show has been credited with changing how people communicate, particularly in how they use pop culture references in everyday conversation. Before Family Guy, pop culture references in conversation were usually recent and obvious. After Family Guy, people started making increasingly obscure references, creating entire conversations that were essentially elaborate chains of cultural callbacks. This changed how humor works in social situations. The show also influenced how other media uses cutaway gags and non sequiturs. Everything from commercials to political campaigns started using Family Guy-style random humor to grab attention and create memorable moments. But perhaps the most significant impact was on censorship standards across all media. Family Guy pushed boundaries so consistently and successfully that it expanded what was considered acceptable on television. Shows that came after could go places that wouldn't have been possible before Family Guy paved the way. The voice acting in Family Guy deserves its own deep dive because there are layers of performance art happening that most people completely miss. Seth MacFarlane doesn't just voice multiple characters. He creates distinct psychological profiles for each voice that reflect different aspects of his own personality. Peter represents 10. MacFarlane's id, his impulse-driven, consequence-ignoring side. Brian represents his superego, his intellectual, morally concerned side. Stewie represents his ego, his ambitious, attention-seeking side. The show is essentially one person having a conversation with different aspects of himself. This psychological complexity extends to the guest voices as well. When celebrities appear on Family Guy, they're not just doing celebrity cameos. They're being integrated into this complex psychological ecosystem that MacFarlane has created. The show's approach to celebrity culture is particularly sophisticated. Rather than just making fun of celebrities, Family Guy examines the psychological impact of fame on both celebrities and the people who consume celebrity culture. This brings us to one of the most overlooked aspects of Family Guy, its commentary on media consumption itself. The show constantly references other TV shows, movies, and cultural phenomena, but it's not just making references for the sake of references. Each reference serves as a commentary on how media shapes our understanding of reality. When Peter acts out scenes from movies, he's demonstrating how deeply fictional narratives penetrate real human behavior. When the show parodies other TV shows, it's examining how different formats and styles influence how we process information. The cutaway gags aren't random interruptions. They're demonstrations of how the human mind actually works. We don't think in linear narratives. We think in associations, tangents, and random connections. Family Guy mirrors the actual structure of human consciousness. This psychological accuracy is why the show resonates so deeply with audiences. It's not just funny, it's cognitively familiar. The chaos of Family Guy matches the chaos of our own internal mental experience. The show's treatment of social issues is another area where there's more depth than meets the eye. While Family Guy often appears to make jokes at the expense of sensitive topics, careful analysis reveals a more complex approach to social commentary. The show uses humor to make serious points more palatable, but it also uses humor to expose the absurdity of certain social attitudes. When characters make prejudiced statements, they're usually portrayed as idiotic or ignorant, effectively undermining the attitudes they're expressing. This technique allows the show to address controversial topics without preaching, but it also creates ambiguity about what the show actually believes. This ambiguity is intentional, forcing viewers to think critically about the issues being presented rather than passively accepting predetermined conclusions. As we wrap up this exploration of Family Guy's hidden depths, it's worth considering what this all means for the future of comedy in television. Family Guy didn't just entertain audiences. It fundamentally changed what television could be and do. The show proved that audiences were hungry for more complex, self-aware entertainment that challenged traditional narrative structures. It demonstrated that comedy could be a vehicle for serious psychological and social exploration without losing its entertainment value. Most importantly, Family Guy showed that taking creative risks, even when they result in cancellation, can ultimately lead to greater success than playing it safe. The show's death and resurrection became a template for how creative properties can find new life through changing audience behaviors and consumption patterns. So the next time you watch Family Guy, remember that you're not just watching a cartoon about a dysfunctional family. You're watching a sophisticated piece of media art that changed television forever, influenced how we communicate with each other, and continues to push boundaries in ways that most viewers never fully appreciate. The real genius of Family Guy isn't in any single joke or episode. It's in how it managed to hide all this complexity behind what appears to be simple, silly humor. That's the ultimate magic trick, and it's still working after all these years. Have you ever wondered about the fascinating dynamics that shape families throughout history? Tonight, as you settle into your bedtime routine, let me share some captivating insights about how family patterns repeat across generations, creating an intricate web of inherited traits, behaviors, and destinies that might just help you drift off into peaceful slumber. Family structures have always been complex tapestries, woven with threads of genetics, environment, and circumstance. Consider how certain characteristics seem to flow like rivers through family lines, creating patterns that emerge generation after generation. These inherited traits aren't just physical features, like eye color or height, but can include personality quirks, talents, and even behavioral tendencies that create a unique family signature. The concept of generational influence runs deeper than most people realize. When we examine family trees, we often discover that certain professions, interests, or life choices appear repeatedly across different generations. A family might produce multiple musicians, teachers, or entrepreneurs, not just through conscious choice, but through a combination of genetic predisposition, shared values, and environmental factors that create natural pathways for similar expressions of human potential. Birth order plays a fascinating role in shaping family dynamics. Firstborn children often develop leadership qualities and feel responsibility for their younger siblings, while middle children frequently become skilled negotiators and peacekeepers. The youngest children in families tend to be more creative and risk-taking, having learned to find unique ways to capture attention and carve out their own identity within the family structure. Family traditions serve as invisible threads that bind generations together across time. These rituals, whether simple bedtime stories, holiday celebrations, or annual camping trips, create shared memories that become part of the family's collective identity. Even seemingly minor traditions like Sunday morning pancakes or evening walks can have profound psychological impacts, providing stability and continuity that children carry forward into their own families. The role of family nicknames reveals interesting patterns about relationships and hierarchies within family units. Often, these pet names originate from childhood moments or personality traits, but they can persist for decades, sometimes becoming more commonly used than actual given names. These linguistic markers create intimate bonds, while also establishing informal family roles and expectations. Consider the phenomenon of family talents that seem to skip generations. A grandparent's artistic ability might lay dormant in their children, only to resurface dramatically in grandchildren who never received formal training but somehow possess intuitive skills. This genetic memory suggests that our family heritage carries forward capabilities that can emerge unexpectedly, creating surprising connections across time. Family communication patterns often mirror broader cultural values and historical contexts. Some families maintain formal, hierarchical communication styles passed down from previous generations, while others adopt more casual, egalitarian approaches. These patterns influence how family members express emotions, resolve conflicts, and show affection, creating distinct family cultures that can persist for generations. The geographic movements of families create interesting stories of adaptation and change. When families migrate, whether across countries or just to different neighborhoods, they face decisions about which traditions to maintain and which to modify. This process of cultural negotiation often reveals the most essential elements of family identity, as members unconsciously choose which practices are too important to abandon. Family financial attitudes demonstrate remarkable consistency across generations. Families that experienced economic hardship often pass down frugal spending habits and strong work ethics, while families with consistent prosperity might emphasize different values around money and success. These economic philosophies become embedded in family culture, influencing career choices and life priorities for decades. The evolution of family roles over time reflects broader social changes while maintaining certain consistent patterns. Traditional gender roles within families have shifted significantly, yet many families still maintain informal divisions of labor and responsibility that echo historical patterns. Understanding these shifts helps us appreciate how families serve as bridges between past and present social norms. Family conflict resolution styles often become inherited patterns that influence how future generations handle disagreements. Some families emphasize direct confrontation and heated discussion, believing that airing grievances leads to stronger relationships. Others prioritize harmony and indirect communication, viewing conflict as something to be minimized rather than engaged. These approaches shape children's expectations about relationships throughout their lives. The role of family storytelling in preserving history cannot be overstated. Every family has its collection of stories about ancestors, significant events, and character-defining moments. These narratives serve multiple purposes. They preserve important information, reinforce family values, and create a sense of belonging to something larger than individual experience. The way these stories are told and retold shapes family identity. Family eating habits and food traditions reveal deep cultural connections and emotional bonds. Certain recipes become treasured family heirlooms, passed down with specific techniques and accompanying stories. The social dynamics around family meals, from formal dining protocols to casual kitchen conversations, establish patterns of gathering and sharing that influence social skills and relationship expectations. Educational values within families create powerful legacies that influence multiple generations. Some families prioritize formal academic achievement, creating environments where intellectual curiosity and scholarly success are highly valued. Others emphasize practical skills and hands-on learning, believing that real-world experience provides the best education. These educational philosophies shape career paths and life choices across generations. Family attitudes toward risk and adventure demonstrate interesting patterns of inheritance and rebellion. Conservative families might produce generations of careful planners and cautious decision-makers, while more adventurous families encourage risk-taking and exploration. Sometimes these patterns reverse, with risk-averse parents producing adventurous children as a form of generational rebellion or balance. The concept of family loyalty manifests in various ways across different family structures. Some families maintain strong expectations of mutual support and collective decision-making, while others prioritize individual autonomy and self-reliance. These loyalty patterns influence everything from career choices to marriage decisions, as family members navigate between personal desires and family expectations. Family creative expressions often create unexpected connections across generations. A love of music, visual arts, writing, or craftsmanship can emerge in various family members, sometimes connecting distant relatives who share artistic sensibilities. These creative threads create special bonds and often become sources of family pride and identity. The role of family pets in shaping household dynamics deserves special attention. Animals often become integral family members, teaching children about responsibility, empathy, and loss. The way families choose, care for, and remember their pets reveals important values about nurturing, commitment, and the circle of life. Family travel patterns and attitudes toward exploration influence worldview development across generations. Some families prioritize exposure to different cultures and experiences, believing that travel broadens perspective and builds character. Others focus on deep connections to local communities and familiar environments, emphasizing the importance of roots and stability. The management of family secrets and sensitive information creates complex dynamics that can influence relationships for generations. How families handle difficult topics like addiction, mental health issues, financial problems, or relationship conflicts establishes patterns of openness or secrecy that affect trust and communication across multiple generations. Family celebration styles reflect deeper values about community, tradition, and joy. Some families create elaborate celebrations for birthdays, holidays, and achievements, believing that marking special occasions strengthens bonds and creates positive memories. Others prefer quiet, intimate acknowledgments, focusing on personal meaning rather than external display. The role of extended family members like grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins in providing alternative perspectives and relationships cannot be overlooked. These connections often provide children with different models of adult behavior and alternative sources of support, enriching the family experience and providing backup systems during difficult times. Family decision-making processes reveal important patterns about authority, consensus building, and individual voice within family structures. Some families operate as democracies, where everyone's opinion carries weight, while others maintain hierarchical structures where certain members hold more influence. These patterns shape children's expectations about leadership and participation in other social contexts. The preservation and sharing of family photographs and mementos creates tangible connections to family history. The way families organize, display, and discuss these artifacts influences how younger generations understand their heritage and place within the family narrative. Digital technology has transformed these practices while maintaining their essential emotional functions. Family approaches to health and wellness often establish lifelong patterns that influence physical and mental well-being. Some families prioritize active lifestyles and preventive care, while others may have more reactive approaches to health issues. These attitudes toward physical maintenance and medical care create lasting influences on individual health choices. The way families handle transitions and major life changes reveals resilience patterns that can be passed down through generations. Some families thrive during periods of change, viewing challenges as opportunities for growth and adaptation. Others prefer stability and may struggle more with transitions, requiring additional support during periods of adjustment. Family gift-giving traditions and attitudes toward material possessions reflect deeper values about generosity, reciprocity, and the relationship between objects and emotions. Some families emphasize thoughtful, personalized gifts that demonstrate attention and care, while others focus on practical items or experiences rather than material objects. As we consider these intricate patterns that weave through family histories, we begin to understand that every family represents a unique experiment in human connection and development. The combinations of genetics, environment, choice, and circumstance create endless variations in how families function and evolve across time. Tonight, as you prepare for sleep, perhaps reflect on the fascinating tapestry of your own family story. Consider the threads that connect you to previous generations and the new patterns you might be creating for future ones. Family dynamics continue to pattern strang up to one's own. Evolve, influenced by changing social norms, technological advances, and individual choices. Yet certain fundamental human needs for connection, belonging, and identity remain constant across all family structures. These complex family systems remind us that we are all part of something larger than ourselves, connected to both past and future through invisible bonds of shared experience, inherited traits, and chosen relationships. Understanding these patterns can help us appreciate the remarkable diversity of human family experience, while recognizing the common threads that unite all families in their fundamental mission of nurturing, protecting, and preparing the next generation for their own journey through life. Sweet dreams, and may your rest be filled with peaceful reflections on the beautiful complexity of family bonds that connect us all across time and space. Have you ever wondered what happens when your favorite animated characters don't just get blown up for laughs, but actually stay dead? Well, grab a cup of warm milk and get comfortable, because tonight we're diving deep into the surprisingly dark world of Family Guy's permanently deceased characters. And trust me, some of these deaths will shock you more than Peter's latest workplace accident. Now, before we start counting bodies, let's be real about something. Family Guy isn't exactly known for its restraint when it comes to cartoon violence. Characters get flattened, exploded, and dismembered on a weekly basis only to magically appear in the next scene like nothing happened. But every once in a while, the Grim Reaper actually keeps his receipts, and these characters never bounce back. Some were killed because fans couldn't stand them, others because their voice actors passed away in real life, and a few just got caught in the crossfire of Seth MacFarlane's twisted sense of humor. So dim those lights, settle into your most comfortable position, and let's explore every character that Family Guy has permanently sent to the great cartoon afterlife. Starting with the very first casualty that taught us this show wasn't messing around when it came to consequences. Our journey begins with Mr. Weed, Peter's original boss at the happy-go-lucky toy factory. This man first graced our screens way back in the pilot episode, catching Peter dead drunk at his workstation because apparently showing up sober was too much to ask. Mr. Weed was everything you'd expect from a factory supervisor dealing with Peter Griffin as an employee. Stern, professional, and probably questioning every career choice that led him to that moment. What made Mr. Weed fascinating wasn't just his no-nonsense attitude, but the running joke about his suspiciously theatrical mannerisms. The show never explicitly confirmed anything about his personal life, but his fabulous gestures and dramatic flair became a subtle recurring gag. Despite Peter's constant screw-ups, Mr. Weed kept giving him second chances, firing and rehiring him like it was some kind of workplace hobby. The irony is that this unusual loyalty to Peter ultimately sealed his fate. In the episode where everything went wrong, Peter decided to invite his boss over for dinner to make a good impression. Surprisingly, the evening started perfectly. Mr. Weed was genuinely impressed by Peter's home, family, and even Brian's ability to speak. He was so impressed that he offered Peter a promotion to head of toy development. That's when dinner took a deadly turn. Brian, shocked by this unexpected good news, started choking on a dinner roll. When Peter and Lois performed the Heimlich maneuver, the roll shot out of Brian's mouth like a projectile and landed directly in Mr. Weed's throat. And unlike the countless other times characters have faced mortal peril in this show, Mr. Weed actually died from choking. The funeral scene was classic Family Guy darkness. Mr. Weed left behind a videotaped will announcing that the happy-go-lucky toy factory would be demolished to make way for something called the homoerotic toy factory. It was absurd, tragic, and weirdly fitting for a character whose sexuality had been a running gag throughout his appearances. Moving from workplace fatalities to relationship drama, let's talk about Loretta Brown, Cleveland's ex-wife, who met her end in a way that perfectly summarized her entire character arc. Loretta was everything Cleveland wasn't. Where he was calm and soft-spoken, she was loud, demanding, and took no prisoners when it came to getting what she wanted. Their marriage started cracking when Quagmire's infamous inability to control himself led to an affair. During a fishing trip, a fish accidentally landed on Loretta's chest, and she took it as some kind of cosmic sign to sleep with the guy who caught it. Classic Family Guy logic, really. When Peter and Brian discovered this affair, they recognized Quagmire by his distinctive tattoo, leading to the most awkward revelation scene in television history. Cleveland's reaction to learning about the betrayal was so pathetically calm that it almost hurt to watch. Instead of rage or dramatic confrontation, he just apologized and accepted being kicked out of his own home. It wasn't until Peter and Lois called him out for being too passive that Cleveland finally found his spine and went after Quagmire. After their divorce was finalized, Loretta lived alone in a house on the hill, which sounds poetic until you remember this is Family Guy, and nothing stays peaceful for long. Her death came during one of Peter's elaborate pranks that somehow always managed to destroy Cleveland's property. This time, instead of Cleveland surviving the chaos like usual, Loretta got caught in the destruction and was crushed by falling debris. The reason behind Loretta's permanent exit was actually practical rather than narrative. Her voice actress, Alex Borstein, who also voices Lois, found Loretta's gravelly voice too difficult and painful to perform. Rather than recast the character, the writers decided to kill her off permanently, which honestly feels like the most Family Guy solution possible. Speaking of deaths that came out of nowhere, Horace's demise was particularly heartbreaking for fans of the Drunken Clam. This guy had been serving drinks to Peter, Quagmire, Joe, and Cleveland since the early seasons, surviving multiple near-death experiences that should have killed any normal bartender. He'd been shot, knocked unconscious, and even survived a fire, leading viewers to believe he was practically immortal. His luck finally ran out during a softball game between the Drunken Clam and Goldman's Pharmacy. Jerome, brought in as a ringer for Mort's team, was at bat when Horace tried to strike him out. Instead of a strikeout, Horace got struck down permanently. The episode revealed his death so casually that it almost felt cruel. But that's exactly the kind of dark humor Family Guy specializes in. The aftermath was even more devastating. The Drunken Clam was set to close permanently, which would have destroyed one of the show's most important locations. Peter tried everything to save the bar, but it was Jerome himself, the man who accidentally killed Horace, who stepped up to buy the establishment and keep it running. It was a surprisingly touching resolution to a tragic situation. Now let's talk about Peter's father, or at least the man he thought was his father for most of his life. Francis Griffin was the embodiment of strict Irish Catholic values, taken to an uncomfortable extreme. His dislike of Lois simply because she was Protestant created constant family tension, and his general disappointment in Peter was palpable in every scene they shared. When Francis retired and moved in with the Griffin family, he transformed their home into what looked like a Catholic gift shop explosion. Crucifixes appeared in every room. Religious imagery covered the walls, and the atmosphere became so oppressive that Peter actually convinced the Pope to visit and talk some sense into his father. The fact that Francis accused the Pope of going soft tells you everything you need to know about his personality. Francis met his end during Meg's birthday party, which was already going poorly because Peter was, as usual, being a complete embarrassment. While attempting one of his signature stupid stunts, Peter accidentally caused an accident that put Francis in the hospital. On his deathbed, Francis had some final words for his son that were both cruel and oddly accurate. He called Peter a fat, stinking drunk, which honestly wasn't wrong, but the timing made it particularly harsh. The revelation that Francis wasn't even Peter's biological father came during therapy sessions afterward. Peter discovered his real father was an Irishman named Mickey McFinnigan, who only accepted Peter after he proved himself in a drinking contest. It was a twisted validation of everything Francis had criticized about Peter's character. Peter's mother, Thelma Griffin, also received the permanent death treatment, though her passing was handled with less dramatic flair. She died of a stroke at the beginning of an episode that quickly shifted focus to Peter getting involved with an older woman, which was weird timing even by Family Guy standards. Thelma had always been a complex character, technically nicer than Francis, but carrying her own set of serious problems. She was a smoker, gambler, and alcoholic who had created several traumatic childhood memories for Peter through her neglectful and sometimes abusive behavior. Her habit of dropping bombshells on Peter whenever she visited made every appearance feel like an emotional landmine. The most shocking revelation came when Peter needed his birth certificate and discovered he wasn't born in America but in Mexico. Thelma had gone there to terminate her pregnancy after learning Peter's real father was an Irish drunk, but changed her mind after giving birth and smuggled baby Peter back to the United States. She then married Francis to give Peter a father figure, creating the lie that lasted Peter's entire childhood. Moving into the realm of characters that almost nobody mourned, Doug's death was announced so casually that it felt like an afterthought. This preschool rival of Stewie's had been a thorn in the baby's side for multiple episodes, representing everything Stewie hated about other children his age. Their rivalry started over playground politics and escalated into full-scale warfare, complete with campaign strategies and political maneuvering when Doug ran unopposed for snack captain. Stewie's terror at the thought of Doug gaining any kind of political experience, even at the preschool level, led to some of the show's most absurd storylines involving toddler espionage and election fraud. The episode ended with Stewie wearing the snack captain hat and casually mentioning that Doug had died in a commuter plane crash that morning. The matter-of-fact delivery and complete lack of emotional response from anyone made it clear that Doug's death was meant to be darkly comedic rather than tragic. Fans were actually relieved to see the annoying character permanently removed from the show. Bertram's death was far more dramatic and tied into one of Family Guy's most science fiction-heavy storylines. As Stewie's artificially conceived half-brother, Bertram represented a legitimate threat to Stewie's intellectual supremacy and served as his most formidable opponent throughout multiple episodes. Their first encounter inside Peter's reproductive system established them as equals in terms of intelligence and ruthlessness. After forming a temporary alliance based on their mutual hatred of Lois, the two babies eventually turned on each other in a conflict that escalated beyond playground politics into actual warfare involving time travel and assassination attempts. Bertram's master plan involved traveling back in time to eliminate one of Stewie's ancestors, Leonardo da Vinci, thereby erasing Stewie from existence entirely. The fact that he actually succeeded in killing da Vinci showed just how dangerous and competent Bertram could be when properly motivated. However, Stewie proved to be the superior strategist by tracking Bertram down through time and ending their rivalry permanently. The execution scene, where Stewie asks Bertram about his favorite bottled water before killing him, demonstrated the cold calculation that made Stewie such a compelling character. Unlike Doug's casual disposal, Bertram's death felt earned through multiple episodes of build-up and character development. The double murder episode stands out as one of Family Guy's most ambitious attempts at sustained storytelling across a full episode length. The mystery dinner party format allowed the writers to eliminate multiple characters while providing entertainment value through the whodunit structure. Muriel Goldman's death during this episode felt particularly cruel because she had never been anything more than a background character who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. As Mort's wife, she was essentially a female version of his neurotic personality, which made their relationship believable but didn't give her much individual characterization. The revelation that she had been exchanging mysterious messages with James Woods created false suspense about her potential involvement in the murders, but she was ultimately just another victim caught up in someone else's revenge scheme. Her funeral scene showed how little impact she had made on the community, with even her husband and son seeming relatively unaffected by her death. Diane Simmons represented the episode's true villain and most shocking revelation. As Tom Tucker's longtime co-anchor, she had been a background presence for years without showing any signs of homicidal tendencies. Her transformation from professional newswoman to calculating murderer demonstrated how deeply personal rejections and professional disappointments could push someone over the edge. The motive behind her killing spree was painfully relatable in its pettiness. Being dumped by James Woods for a younger woman and facing replacement by a younger co-anchor as she turned 40 created the perfect storm of humiliation and desperation. Her methodical approach to framing Tom Tucker for the murders showed intelligence and planning that made her genuinely dangerous. Diane's final confrontation with Lois provided the classic villain monologue moment where all her motivations were revealed. The irony of being killed by Stewie, a baby, after successfully eliminating multiple adult targets added the kind of dark humor that Family Guy specialized in creating. Patty Tanager's death was perhaps the most satisfying for viewers who had endured his annoying catchphrase and constant attempts to start fights over nothing. This short, aggressive man represented everything irritating about people who create drama where none needs to exist. His role as the boss of a car dealership where Brian worked temporarily showed that his obnoxious personality wasn't limited to casual encounters. Even in professional settings, he couldn't resist making inappropriate comments and stirring up unnecessary conflict with his employees and customers. The poetic justice of his death came when he tried to start a fight with someone operating a military tank. His final words, maintaining his catchphrase even while facing certain doom, showed that he was committed to his obnoxious personality right until the end. The audience's reaction to his death was overwhelmingly positive, proving that sometimes characters are specifically designed to be eliminated. The deaths of Angela and Mayor Adam West carried more emotional weight because they were tied to the real-life passing of their voice actors. These weren't creative decisions made for storyline purposes, but necessary responses to losing the talented people who brought these characters to life. Angela's character arc, from hostile supervisor to lonely woman seeking connection, provided some of Peter's most uncomfortable workplace storylines. Her sexual harassment of Peter while threatening his job security created situations that were both comedically awkward and genuinely problematic by today's standards. Her backstory, revealing years of loneliness and isolation, made her desperate actions more understandable without excusing them. The resolution where Peter dresses up to take her on a fake date showed his capacity for kindness even when dealing with someone who had made his life difficult. Carrie Fisher's death in real life meant that Angela's character had to be written out permanently. The funeral scene in her honor served as both a farewell to the character and a tribute to the actress who had voiced her. Peter's mistake of ending up at the wrong funeral added typical Family Guy humor to what was otherwise a genuinely touching moment. Mayor Adam West's death marked the end of one of the show's most beloved recurring characters. His wonderfully insane personality and possibly corrupt political practices had provided countless moments of absurd humor throughout his long tenure as Quahog's mayor. The real Adam West's connection to his animated counterpart made the character feel more authentic and grounded despite his completely unrealistic behavior and dialogue. His brief challenge from Lois during her political phase showed that even incompetent leadership was preferable to the corruption that inevitably followed. His marriage to Carol Pewterschmidt, Lois's sister, created additional family connections that made his death more personally impactful for the main characters. The tribute episode where Brian petitioned to rename the high school after Mayor West provided proper closure for a character who had been part of the show's fabric for over 16 seasons. The ghost appearance at the end where Mayor West saves Brian from falling off a cliff gave the character one final moment of heroism and showed that death couldn't completely remove him from the Family Guy universe. His replacement by Wild West as mayor acknowledged that the character was irreplaceable while allowing the show to continue. These permanent deaths in Family Guy serve multiple purposes beyond simple shock value. They demonstrate that actions can have genuine consequences, even in a cartoon universe known for its resurrection-running gags. Some characters were eliminated because they had served their narrative purpose, others because fan reaction made their continued presence counterproductive, and some because real-world circumstances forced the writers' hands. The variety in how these deaths were handled shows the range of Family Guy's storytelling capabilities. From casual mentions that treat death as an afterthought to elaborate murder mystery episodes that build tension across an entire episode, the show has found multiple ways to permanently remove characters while maintaining its signature dark humor. The emotional impact of these deaths varies significantly based on character development and audience attachment. Long-running characters like Mayor West and Horace created genuine sadness among fans, while annoying characters like Doug and Patty Tanager were celebrated in their passing. This range of reactions demonstrates how effectively the show had developed distinct personalities for even its minor recurring characters. What makes these permanent deaths particularly interesting is how they contrast with Family Guy's usual approach to cartoon violence. The show regularly features deaths that are immediately reversed or ignored, making the permanent ones stand out as genuinely significant events. When a character stays dead in this universe, it carries extra weight, because viewers know it's not the norm. The practical reasons behind some of these deaths, such as voice actor availability or fan reaction, show how external factors can influence creative decisions in long-running animated series. The writers have generally handled these necessary eliminations with appropriate respect while maintaining the show's comedic tone. Looking back at this collection of permanently deceased characters reveals the evolution of Family Guy's storytelling over its many seasons. Earlier deaths, like Mr. Weed, were often accidental consequences of the show's chaotic humor, while later deaths, like those in the murder mystery episode, showed more deliberate narrative planning. The show's willingness to permanently eliminate characters demonstrates confidence in its ability to create new sources of humor and conflict without relying on the same recurring personalities indefinitely. This creative flexibility has helped Family Guy maintain freshness across its extended run, while still honoring the contributions of departed characters. These deaths also serve as reminders that even in the most outrageous fictional universes, some actions cannot be undone. They provide moments of genuine consequence in a show that otherwise operates on cartoon logic, where nothing permanent ever happens to the main characters. So there you have it, fellow insomniacs and Family Guy enthusiasts. A complete tour through the surprisingly extensive graveyard of characters who didn't make it back from their final Family Guy appearances. From workplace accidents to murder mysteries, from natural causes to tank-related incidents, the show has found creative ways to permanently remove characters while maintaining its signature blend of dark humor and unexpected heart. Sweet dreams, and remember, in the world of Family Guy, even cartoon death can sometimes be permanent. Have you ever wondered what makes Family Guy the perfect show to fall asleep to? Tonight, we're diving deep into the wonderfully weird world of Quahog to uncover some fascinating facts that might just help you understand why millions of people drift off to this animated chaos every single night. But first, let me ask you something. What if I told you that the baby genius who plots world domination actually has one of the most tragic character arcs in television history? Or that there's a scientific reason why Peter Griffin's voice might be the ultimate sleep aid? Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll never look at your bedtime Family Guy marathon the same way again. Let's start with something that'll blow your mind. Stewie Griffin, that diabolical infant with the posh British accent, wasn't always the character we know today. In the original concept, he was supposed to be much darker and more sinister. The show's creator, Seth MacFarlane, initially envisioned him as a genuinely evil character whose plans would occasionally succeed. But here's the fascinating part that most fans don't realize. Stewie's entire personality is built on a foundation of insecurity and loneliness that makes him oddly relatable, especially during those late-night viewing sessions when you're feeling a bit isolated yourself. The genius baby's accent tells us everything we need to know about human psychology. In one of the show's most revealing moments, Stewie admits in therapy that his British accent is completely fake. He adopted it to sound smarter and more sophisticated than everyone around him. It's essentially vocal armor designed to protect his vulnerable core. This resonates with so many viewers because we all put on masks to hide our insecurities. When you're lying in bed at 3 a.m, there's something comforting about a character who's also struggling with authenticity. But here's where it gets really interesting. The show deliberately keeps it ambiguous whether other characters can actually understand Stewie. Sometimes they respond to him. Sometimes they completely ignore his elaborate monologues about world domination. This creates a dreamlike quality that perfectly mirrors the state between waking and sleeping. Your brain doesn't have to work too hard to follow rigid logic because the show itself operates on dream logic. Speaking of dream logic, let's talk about the show's relationship with time and reality. Family Guy is famous for its cutaway gags that transport viewers to completely different scenarios mid-episode. One moment Peter is arguing with Lois about dinner. The next moment we're watching a historical flashback about Napoleon's bathroom habits. These rapid shifts in context actually mimic the way our minds work when we're falling asleep, jumping from thought to thought without linear connection. The show's approach to continuity is another sleep-inducing factor. Characters die and come back to life, major events get completely forgotten by the next episode, and the family somehow never ages despite running for over 2 decades. This lack of consequences creates a safe space for your mind. You don't need to worry about emotional investment or following complex storylines. It's mental comfort food. Now let's examine the voice acting, because this is where the science gets really interesting. Seth MacFarlane voices multiple main characters, including Peter, Brian, and Stewie. The consistency of hearing the same vocal patterns creates a subconscious sense of familiarity and safety. Peter's voice in particular has a rhythmic, almost hypnotic quality that many sleep specialists would recognize as naturally soothing. The slight nasal tone and steady pacing can actually help regulate breathing patterns. Brian Griffin represents something unique in the Family Guy universe. As the talking dog who serves as the show's voice of reason, he often delivers philosophical observations and cultural commentary. But here's what makes him perfect for sleep viewing. His conversations with Stewie frequently dive into existential topics without becoming too heavy or anxiety-provoking. They discuss the meaning of life, mortality, and purpose in ways that feel profound but never overwhelming. It's like having a gentle philosophical discussion as you drift off to sleep. The show's approach to controversial topics is surprisingly sophisticated when you analyze it from a sleep psychology perspective. While Family Guy is known for pushing boundaries, it does so in such an over-the-top way that it becomes almost cartoonish rather than genuinely disturbing. This allows viewers to process difficult subjects without the emotional intensity that would keep them awake. It's social commentary wrapped in enough absurdity to feel safe. Let's dive into the Griffin family dynamics, because they reveal something fascinating about comfort viewing. Despite all their dysfunction, the family always comes back together by the end of each episode. Peter might do something incredibly stupid. Lois might lose her temper. Meg might face another humiliation, but they remain a unit. This predictable structure provides emotional security. No matter how chaotic things get, you know everything will essentially reset by the next episode. The show's treatment of Meg Griffin deserves special attention. As the perpetually misunderstood teenager who faces constant rejection and ridicule, she represents the part of ourselves we're most insecure about. But the show's portrayal of her suffering is so exaggerated that it becomes therapeutic rather than depressing. It's like having your own adolescent anxieties reflected back to you in such an extreme way that they lose their power to hurt you. Chris Griffin, the dim-witted but kind-hearted son, provides another layer of comfort. His innocence and genuine sweetness create moments of unexpected warmth throughout the show. When everything else is cynical and sarcastic, Chris offers glimpses of pure, uncomplicated emotion. These moments work like pressure valves, releasing tension just when the cynicism might become overwhelming. The show's relationship with pop culture creates a unique viewing experience that's perfect for repeat watching. The references span decades, from obscure 70s television shows to current internet memes. This means different jokes land differently depending on your age, mood, and current knowledge base. You can watch the same episode multiple times and discover new layers, but the discovery process is gentle and rewarding rather than demanding. Family Guy's animation style contributes to its sleep friendliness in subtle but important ways. The character designs are simple and rounded, avoiding sharp angles or jarring visual elements that might startle viewers. The color palette is warm and familiar, dominated by the cozy yellows and browns of the Griffin home. Even during action sequences or fantastical cutaways, the visual style remains consistent and non-threatening. The show's musical elements deserve recognition too. From Stewie and Brian's elaborate musical numbers to Peter's improvised songs, music is woven throughout the series in ways that create rhythm and flow. These musical interludes often serve as natural breaking points, giving your brain permission to zone out or drift away. The songs are catchy enough to be memorable, but rarely complex enough to demand active listening. One of the most brilliant aspects of Family Guy's sleep appeal is its relationship with repetition. The show has been running for so long that certain gags and character interactions have become ritualistic. Peter fighting the giant chicken, Stewie's elaborate revenge plots against Lois, Brian's pretentious literary aspirations. These recurring elements create a sense of familiarity that can be deeply comforting for regular viewers. The show's approach to violence is another key factor. While there's plenty of cartoon violence, it's always presented in such an unrealistic way that it never feels genuinely threatening. Characters get blown up, shot, crushed, and dismembered, only to appear completely fine in the next scene. This consequence-free violence allows viewers to experience excitement and tension without any lasting anxiety. Let's talk about the show's treatment of mortality, because this might be the most important element for sleep viewing. Death appears frequently in Family Guy, but it's always treated as either temporary or comedic rather than genuinely tragic. Characters die and return, discuss death casually, and face mortal peril without real consequences. For viewers dealing with their own mortality anxieties, especially late at night, this approach can be surprisingly therapeutic. The writing style of Family Guy creates a unique rhythm that mirrors natural sleep patterns. Episodes often start with high-energy scenarios that gradually wind down through various subplots and cutaways. By the time you reach the resolution, the pacing has naturally slowed, making it easier to transition into actual sleep. It's like the show is designed to help you power down. Family Guy's relationship with nostalgia is complex and comforting. The show constantly references and parodies elements from decades past, creating a sense of collective cultural memory. Whether it's a reference to an 80s movie, a 70s television show, or a 90s commercial, these callbacks create connections to simpler times. For many viewers, this nostalgic element provides emotional comfort that eases the transition to sleep. The show's approach to relationships and romance offers another layer of sleep-friendly content. Despite all the dysfunction and crude humor, there are genuine moments of love and connection between characters. Peter and Lois, despite their constant conflicts, clearly love each other. Stewie and Brian, despite their differences, have formed an everyday, unlikely but deep friendship. These relationship dynamics provide emotional warmth without demanding too much investment. Here's something most people don't realize about Family Guy's structure. The show operates on multiple levels of engagement. You can watch it as pure background noise, letting the familiar voices and music wash over you. You can engage with the surface-level humor and sight gags. Or you can dive deep into the cultural references and character development. This flexibility makes it perfect for different stages of falling asleep. The show's treatment of everyday situations is particularly sleep-friendly. Many episodes revolve around mundane domestic issues like household chores, neighbor disputes, or family dinners that somehow spiral into elaborate adventures. But no matter how wild things get, they always return to the familiar setting of the Griffin home. This creates a sense of adventure within safety, excitement within security. Family Guy's approach to current events and social issues provides another comfort layer. The show comments on politics, social trends, and cultural phenomena, but always through the lens of cartoon absurdity. This allows viewers to engage with real-world concerns without the anxiety that usually accompanies such topics. It's like having a pressure release valve for contemporary stress. The show's episodic nature means you never have to worry about missing crucial plot developments if you fall asleep mid-episode. While there are occasionally multi-part episodes or recurring storylines, the vast majority of episodes are self-contained. This removes the anxiety about keeping up with complex narratives and allows your mind to relax completely. As we wrap up this deep dive into why Family Guy has become the ultimate sleep companion for millions of viewers, remember that comfort viewing is a deeply personal experience. What works for one person might not work for another. But there's something undeniably special about a show that can make you laugh, think, and ultimately feel at peace, all within the span of 22 minutes. The genius of Family Guy as a sleep aid lies in its perfect balance of engagement and relaxation. It's stimulating enough to occupy your conscious mind and prevent anxious thoughts from taking over, but familiar and comforting enough to allow your subconscious to begin the journey towards sleep. Whether you're drawn to Stewie's elaborate schemes, Peter's childlike wonder, or Brian's philosophical musings, there's something in this animated chaos for everyone. So the next time you find yourself reaching for that remote at bedtime, remember that you're not just choosing mindless entertainment. You're selecting a carefully crafted comfort blanket that's helped millions of people transition from the stresses of the day into peaceful rest. Sweet dreams, and remember, in Quahog, everything always works out in the end. Picture this. You're lying in bed, eyes heavy, ready to drift off into dreamland. But instead of counting sheep, what if I told you some absolutely wild facts about one of television's most chaotic families? Tonight, we're diving deep into the bizarre, hilarious, and sometimes disturbing world of Family Guy, with facts so strange, they might just lull you into the most entertaining sleep of your life. So get comfortable, dim those lights, and let me take you on a journey through Quahog that's perfect for your bedtime routine. Whether you're a die-hard fan or just need something to occupy your mind as you wind down, these Family Guy facts will give you plenty to think about as you drift off to sleep. Let's start with something that might surprise you about the show's creation. Family Guy almost never made it to air in the first place. Seth MacFarlane created the pilot when he was just 24 years old, working as a writer and animator for Hanna-Barbera. The original pilot was so different from what we know today that it's almost unrecognizable. Brian wasn't even supposed to be the sophisticated martini-drinking intellectual we know and love. Originally, he was just going to be a regular dog who occasionally spoke. But MacFarlane decided that having a talking dog who acted completely normal would be funnier than having one who was still essentially just a pet. Speaking of Brian, here's a fact that might keep you thinking as you fall asleep. Brian Griffin is technically immortal in some episodes, but ages normally in others. The show has never been consistent about whether Brian ages like a regular dog or if he's somehow exempt from typical canine lifespans. In some episodes, he's mentioned to be around 7 years old in dog years, which would make him middle-aged. But in others, he references events from decades ago, as if he experienced them personally. This inconsistency is just one of many things that make Family Guy's continuity so fascinatingly chaotic. Now, let's talk about Stewie Griffin, the baby genius with questionable intentions. Did you know that Stewie's sexuality has been a subject of debate not just among fans but actually within the show's writing room? Seth MacFarlane has stated in interviews that Stewie is meant to be gay, but the character's sexuality has been portrayed inconsistently throughout the series. In early episodes, Stewie had crushes on various female characters, but later seasons have shown him with clear attractions to male characters. The writers have deliberately kept this ambiguous, which adds another layer to Stewie's already complex character. Here's something that might give you pleasant dreams. The voice actors for Family Guy are incredibly talented beyond just their work on the show. Seth MacFarlane, who voices Peter, Brian, and Stewie, is also an accomplished singer who has released several jazz albums. His singing voice is so good that he's performed with major orchestras and has even done tribute concerts to classic crooners like Frank Sinatra. Imagine Peter Griffin serenading you to sleep with smooth jazz standards. Let's dive into some facts about the show's most controversial character, Peter Griffin himself. Peter's weight has been a running gag throughout the series, but did you know that his exact weight has been mentioned multiple times with wildly different numbers? In some episodes, he's said to weigh around 270 pounds, while in others, the number jumps to over 300. The inconsistency is intentional, reflecting how the show treats Peter's physical characteristics as fluid depending on what's funniest for any given episode. Peter's job history is another source of endless entertainment and confusion. Throughout the series, he's worked at a toy factory, a brewery, various other random jobs, and has even been unemployed for extended periods. But here's what's interesting. The show never explains how the Griffin family maintains their lifestyle during Peter's unemployed periods. They live in a decent house in what appears to be a middle-class neighborhood, yet Peter's employment status seems to have no impact on their standard of living. It's one of those cartoon logic elements that you just have to accept. Speaking of the Griffin house, have you ever noticed that the layout seems to change between episodes? Sometimes there are rooms that appear out of nowhere, and other times, familiar rooms seem to vanish. The basement, in particular, seems to change size and purpose depending on the episode's needs. In some episodes, it's a small storage space, while in others, it's large enough to hold elaborate contraptions or even entire gatherings. This kind of flexible architecture is common in animated shows, but Family Guy takes it to particularly absurd lengths. Let's talk about Meg Griffin, the family's perpetual punching bag. Here's a fact that might surprise you. Meg was originally supposed to be the most normal character in the family, serving as the audience's point of view into this chaotic household. But as the show evolved, the writers found it funnier to make her the target of everyone's abuse. This shift happened gradually over the first few seasons, and by the time it was fully established, Meg had transformed from a relatable teenager into a character whose suffering was played for laughs. The voice of Meg has also changed throughout the series. Originally voiced by Lacey Chabert, the role was taken over by Mila Kunis starting in Season 2. The transition was so seamless that many viewers didn't even notice the change. Kunis was actually still a teenager when she started voicing Meg, making her closer in age to the character than most voice actors are to their animated counterparts. Here's a soothing fact about the show's animation style. Family Guy uses a technique called cutaway gags that allows for infinite creative possibilities. These brief segments, usually introduced by phrases like, "This is worse than the time," allow the animators to create completely different scenarios, time periods, and art styles within a single episode. Some of these cutaways reference obscure pop culture moments, while others create entirely fictional scenarios. The animators have said that creating these cutaways is one of the most enjoyable parts of working on the show because there are virtually no limitations on what they can create. Let's discuss some facts about Quahog, the fictional Rhode Island town where the Griffins live. The town's name is actually a type of clam, which is fitting given Rhode Island's coastal location. But here's what's interesting. The geography of Quahog seems to change depending on the episode's needs. Sometimes it's portrayed as a small town where everyone knows each other, while other times it seems large enough to support multiple shopping districts, airports, and major venues. The town has everything from a small town feel to big city amenities, depending on what the plot requires. The Drunken Clam, the bar where Peter and his friends hang out, is based on real bars that McFarlane frequented during his college years. The atmosphere and the type of conversations that happen there are drawn from McFarlane's actual experiences, which explains why the dialogue often feels so authentic despite the absurd situations. Here's something that might help you drift off. The show's theme song is intentionally designed to be catchy and memorable, but it's also shorter than most television theme songs. This was a deliberate choice to maximize the amount of time available for actual content in each episode. The brevity of the theme song allows for more jokes and story development, which is part of why Family Guy episodes often feel packed with content. Let's talk about some of the show's recurring characters and their origins. Glenn Quagmire, the Griffins' oversexed neighbor, was originally conceived as a minor character who would appear occasionally, but the writers found his character so entertaining that he became a regular part of the cast. His distinctive laugh and catchphrase, "giggity," weren't in the original character design, but developed naturally as the voice actor, Seth MacFarlane, experimented with the character's vocal patterns. Cleveland Brown, Peter's friend who eventually got his own spin-off show, was originally going to be a very different character. The writers initially conceived him as being more similar to Peter in personality, but they decided it would be funnier to make him the calm, rational member of the group. This decision led to Cleveland becoming the voice of reason among Peter's friends, often serving as a counterbalance to their more outrageous behavior. Joe Swanson, the paraplegic police officer, was created to add diversity to the show's cast, but the writers were careful to make his disability just one aspect of his character rather than his defining trait. In many episodes, Joe is the most competent and heroic character, often solving problems that the other characters can't handle. His wheelchair is rarely portrayed as a limitation, and he's often shown doing things that would be impossible for anyone, disabled or not. Here's a relaxing fact about the show's production schedule. Family Guy episodes are typically produced months in advance, which allows the animators and voice actors to take their time perfecting each episode. Unlike live-action shows that have to rush to meet weekly deadlines, animated shows like Family Guy can spend weeks on individual scenes, ensuring that every joke lands and every visual gag is perfectly timed. The show's writer's room operates on a collaborative system where anyone can contribute ideas, regardless of their official role on the show. This has led to some of the show's most memorable moments coming from unexpected sources. Sometimes the person responsible for continuity might suggest a joke that becomes central to an episode, or a voice actor might improvise a line that becomes a recurring catchphrase. Let's discuss some facts about the show's cultural impact that might give you something peaceful to think about as you fall asleep. Family Guy has been translated into dozens of languages, and each version faces the challenge of adapting American cultural references for international audiences. Some jokes that work perfectly in English become completely different jokes in other languages, while others are replaced entirely with references that local audiences will understand. The show's influence on internet culture has been enormous. Many of Family Guy's cutaway gags and memorable quotes have become memes that spread far beyond the show's original audience. The phrase, "Oh no," in Peter's distinctive voice, for example, became a popular reaction GIF used in contexts that have nothing to do with the show itself. Here's something interesting about the show's approach to celebrity guest stars. Unlike many animated shows that cast celebrities to voice characters similar to themselves, Family Guy often has famous people voice characters that are completely different from their real personalities. This approach has led to some surprising and entertaining performances that showcase different sides of well-known actors and musicians. The show's approach to continuity is deliberately inconsistent, which actually makes it more relaxing to watch in some ways. You don't need to remember every detail from previous episodes to understand what's happening, because the show often contradicts its own established facts for the sake of a good joke. This means you can watch episodes in any order and still enjoy them fully, which is perfect for casual viewing or when you're trying to wind down. Let's talk about some facts about the show's music and sound design. Family Guy employs a full orchestra for many of its musical numbers, which is unusual for an animated television series. This attention to musical detail means that even throwaway songs and cutaway gags are often surprisingly well-produced and catchy. The show's composers have backgrounds in both television and theatrical music, which explains why many of the musical segments feel like they could work on stage. The sound effects in Family Guy are often created in unusual ways. The iconic sound of Peter falling down and hurting himself, which happens in almost every episode, is actually a combination of several different sounds layered together. The voice actors often provide their own sound effects during recording sessions, which gives the show a more organic feel than if all the sounds were added in post-production. Here's a fact that might help you smile as you drift off. The show's animators often hide small details in backgrounds that only the most observant viewers will notice. These Easter eggs can be anything from references to other shows, inside jokes among the production staff, or even tiny animations that have nothing to do with the main story. Finding these hidden details has become a hobby for some fans, who watch episodes multiple times just to catch things they missed. The show's approach to time and aging is fascinatingly inconsistent. While the characters never seem to get older, the show acknowledges the passage of time in other ways. Technology updates, cultural references change, and real-world events are incorporated into episodes. This creates a strange temporal bubble where the characters exist in a perpetual present that somehow includes decades of cultural history. Let's discuss some production facts that showcase the incredible amount of work that goes into each episode. A single episode of Family Guy requires thousands of individual drawings, even though much of the animation is now done digitally. Each character expression, each background element, and each special effect needs to be designed and animated individually. The attention to detail is remarkable when you consider how quickly episodes need to be produced. The voice recording process is also more complex than you might expect. While Seth MacFarlane voices multiple characters, he rarely records them in conversation with each other during the same session. Instead, each character's lines are recorded separately, and the conversations are constructed in post-production. This means that MacFarlane has to imagine how his different characters would interact with each other and adjust his performance accordingly. Here's something soothing to consider. Despite all the chaos and controversy surrounding Family Guy, The show has created jobs for hundreds of people over its many seasons. Animators, voice actors, writers, musicians, sound engineers, and countless other professionals have built careers working on this show. In a way, all of this absurd humor has created a small community of creative people who work together to bring these ridiculous stories to life. The show's international success has also led to cultural exchange in unexpected ways. American animators have learned techniques from international studios, while animators from other countries have brought their own cultural perspectives to American television. This cross-pollination of ideas has enriched the medium of animation as a whole. As we near the end of our journey through these Family Guy facts, let's consider something that might give you pleasant dreams. The show's enduring popularity suggests that there's something universally appealing about stories of dysfunctional families who, despite all their problems, somehow stick together. Even though the Griffin family is exaggerated to absurd proportions, there's something recognizable about their dynamics that resonates with audiences around the world. The show's ability to find humor in everyday situations, even when those situations are taken to impossible extremes, reflects a fundamentally optimistic view of life. No matter how bad things get, there's always something to laugh about. This perspective can be oddly comforting when you're trying to wind down from your own day's challenges. So, as you drift off to sleep tonight, you can think about this wild, wonderful, and completely unpredictable animated world where anything can happen, where the impossible is routine, and where laughter is always just around the corner. Sweet dreams, and may your rest be as peaceful as a Quahog evening, minus all the explosions and chaos, of course. Whether you're a longtime fan or someone who's just discovered these bizarre facts, I hope this journey through Family Guy's strange universe has given you something entertaining to think about as you fall asleep. Remember, in the world of animation, anything is possible, and tomorrow is just another opportunity for new adventures and unexpected laughs. Picture this. You're lying in bed, ready to drift off to sleep, but your brain just won't switch off. Well, tonight's different. Tonight, we're going on a gentle journey through the wonderfully weird world of Family Guy with some truly fascinating facts that'll help ease you into dreamland. So get comfortable, close your eyes if you want, and let's explore the Griffin family universe together. Let me start with something that might surprise you. Peter Griffin wasn't always meant to be the bumbling father figure we know today. The creators originally envisioned him as more of a traditional sitcom dad. But Seth MacFarlane quickly realized that making Peter completely incompetent would be far more entertaining. This decision shaped the entire show's DNA, creating a character whose stupidity knows no bounds. Speaking of Peter's origins, here's a delightfully absurd detail about his background. According to the show's mythology, Peter is actually of mixed Irish and Mexican heritage, which explains some of his more colorful personality traits. His biological father, Mickey McFinnigan, lives in Ireland and has a talking sheep companion named O'Brien. When Peter finally meets Mickey, they bond over a drinking contest, because of course they do. It's these little touches of insanity that make Family Guy so uniquely entertaining. The Griffin family tree is absolutely bonkers when you really dig into it. Take Francis Griffin, Peter's strict Catholic stepfather who despised Lois for not being Irish enough. This man was so religiously rigid that he even dismissed the Pope's approval of Peter and Lois's marriage. But here's the kicker. Francis later became the Pope's special assistant. The irony is delicious, and it perfectly captures the show's love of contradictory character development. Now, let's talk about something that might help you sleep better. The show's approach to time and continuity. Unlike many animated series that maintain strict timelines, Family Guy operates in a floating timeline where characters can age or stay the same age depending on what the story needs. Stewie, for instance, has been 1 year old for over 2 decades, yet he's traveled through time, built complex inventions, and had philosophical discussions about existence. This fluid approach to reality creates a dreamlike quality that's oddly soothing. Here's a gentle fact about Chris Griffin that showcases the show's surprising depth beneath all the chaos. Despite being portrayed as academically hopeless, Chris actually has genuine artistic talent. In one episode, he gets accepted to art school, but chooses to stay with his family instead. It's moments like these that remind us there's heart underneath all the madness, even in characters who seem purely comedic. Let me share something about Stewie that's both fascinating and oddly comforting. His relationship with Brian the dog represents one of television's most unusual friendships. They've been through adventures across time and space. They've argued like an old married couple, and when Brian died, Stewie was so heartbroken, he literally rewrote time to save him. There's something beautiful about that level of devotion, even in a cartoon about talking dogs and genius babies. The voice acting in Family Guy is another soothing element worth considering as you drift off. Seth MacFarlane voices multiple main characters, including Peter, Brian, and Stewie, essentially having conversations with himself for hours during recording sessions. Imagine the surreal experience of being alone in a sound booth, switching between a baby's British accent, a dog's sophisticated tone, and a grown man's childish outbursts. It's like a one-person theater performance that's been going on for decades. Here's something wonderfully absurd about the show's background characters. Cleveland Brown, Peter's neighbor and friend, was originally just meant to appear in a few episodes, but his calm, measured way of speaking proved so funny when contrasted with Peter's chaos that he became a main character and eventually got his own spin-off show. Sometimes the best things in life happen by accident, which is a nice thought to carry into sleep. Let's explore some of the more obscure Griffin family members, because their stories have a mythical quality perfect for bedtime. There's King Arthur Griffin, an ancestor who could supposedly pull Excalibur from the stone. Then there's Moses Griffin, who led the Jews out of Egypt while complaining about billboards and demanding more Jolly Ranchers. The show creates these elaborate historical figures that exist purely to set up jokes, but there's something wonderfully imaginative about building an entire fictional lineage. The relationship between Stewie and his stuffed bear Rupert is oddly touching when you think about it. This genius baby, capable of building time machines and mind control devices, still needs his security blanket in the form of a simple teddy bear. It reminds us that no matter how complex we become, we all need something soft and familiar to hold on to. That's a comforting thought as you settle into your own bed. Family Guy's approach to cutaway gags creates a unique storytelling rhythm that's almost hypnotic. The show will interrupt itself mid-scene to show us a completely unrelated flashback or fantasy sequence, then seamlessly return to the main story. It's like how our minds work when we're falling asleep, jumping from one random thought to another without any logical connection. Yet somehow, it all flows together. Here's a fascinating detail about Meg Griffin that reveals the show's unexpected complexity. Despite being constantly mistreated by her family, actress Mila Kunis has mentioned in interviews that playing Meg taught her about resilience and finding humor in difficult situations. The character who seems to exist purely for abuse actually represents something deeper about perseverance and maintaining hope even when everything seems to go wrong. The show's relationship with censorship has always been playful rather than aggressive. When certain words can't be said on television, the characters find creative ways around it, often making the censored version funnier than the uncensored one would have been. There's something delightfully subversive about finding humor within constraints, like creating art within specific rules. Let me tell you about Brian's literary aspirations, which add a layer of melancholy to his character that's perfect for quiet reflection. He's constantly working on novels that never get published, struggling with alcoholism, and dealing with the existential crisis of being a talking dog in a world that doesn't quite make sense. His failures are deeply human, reminding us that everyone struggles with their dreams and disappointments. The background music in Family Guy deserves more recognition than it gets. The composers create these elaborate orchestral pieces for scenes that last only seconds, treating throwaway gags with the same musical attention as epic movie moments. There's something beautiful about that level of craftsmanship being applied to the most ridiculous situations imaginable. Quagmire's house being right next to the Griffins creates an interesting dynamic that's been running for over 20 years. These neighbors who are simultaneously friends and enemies, who know each other's secrets but continue to be surprised by each other's actions. It's like a very slow, very weird sitcom relationship that unfolds over decades rather than seasons. The show's treatment of death is uniquely casual and somehow comforting because of it. Characters die and come back regularly. Time gets rewritten, and consequences are often temporary. In a world where permanence can feel overwhelming, There's something soothing about a universe where mistakes can be undone and second chances are always available. Here's something about the show's animation style that contributes to its dreamlike quality. The characters are drawn with simple, clean lines that make them feel both familiar and slightly unreal. Their movements are fluid but exaggerated, creating a world that feels just removed enough from reality to be purely entertaining rather than stressful. The recurring theme of Peter's various jobs throughout the series creates a sense of endless possibility. He's been everything from a bodega owner to a Renaissance artist to a country music star, often within the same season. There's something liberating about a character who can completely reinvent himself whenever the story demands it, suggesting that we all have infinite potential for change. Family Guy's approach to celebrity cameos is uniquely self-aware. When famous people appear on the show, they're often playing exaggerated versions of themselves, or completely different characters entirely. It creates this meta-textual layer where reality and fiction blend together in ways that feel dreamlike and surreal. The show's relationship with its own continuity is fascinatingly relaxed. Characters will reference events from previous episodes as if they happened, then completely contradict those same events in the next episode. It's like how dreams work. Everything makes perfect sense until you try to examine the logic too closely. Let me share something about the show's writing process that might interest you as you drift off. The writer's room for Family Guy is known for being one of the most collaborative in television, with jokes being refined and improved by multiple people before making it to air. Each throwaway line has been polished by a room full of comedy writers, which explains why even the smallest moments often contain multiple layers of humor. The relationship between Lois and Peter represents something uniquely optimistic despite all their problems. No matter how much chaos Peter creates, no matter how frustrated Lois becomes, they always find their way back to each other by the end of each episode. It's a cartoon version of unconditional love that's oddly reassuring. Stewie's gradual evolution from would-be world conqueror to adventure-seeking toddler reflects the show's own maturation over time. Early Stewie was genuinely menacing, plotting elaborate schemes to murder his mother. Modern Stewie is more interested in friendship and exploration. It's like watching a character literally grow up, even though he's technically stayed the same age. The show's use of musical numbers creates these unexpected moments of pure joy in the middle of chaotic episodes. Characters will suddenly break into elaborate song and dance routines that rival professional Broadway productions, then immediately return to the mundane problems of suburban life. These musical interludes feel like shared dreams where anything is possible. Family Guy's approach to social commentary is gentle rather than preachy, which makes it perfect bedtime viewing. The show addresses serious topics through the lens of absurd situations, making complex issues feel manageable rather than overwhelming. It's comedy as comfort food, nourishing without being heavy. The longevity of the show itself is something worth contemplating as you prepare for sleep. Family Guy has been on television for over 2 decades, meaning that some viewers have literally grown up with these characters. There's something deeply comforting about having fictional friends who are always there, always ready to entertain you, no matter what's happening in your real life. Brian's death and resurrection storyline remains one of the most emotionally powerful moments in the show's history. When the writers temporarily killed off the beloved character, the fan reaction was so intense that they brought him back within a few episodes. It demonstrated that beneath all the irreverence and chaos, people genuinely care about these animated characters as if they were real friends and family members. The show's treatment of mundane activities, like grocery shopping, going to work, or sitting in traffic, transforms everyday boredom into comedic gold. There's something oddly therapeutic about seeing ordinary frustrations played out in exaggerated cartoon form. It makes your own daily annoyances feel more manageable and even potentially funny. Here's something beautiful about the show's approach to friendship. Peter's relationship with his drinking buddies at the Drunken Clam represents a very specific type of male bonding, sitting around, talking about nothing important, and just enjoying each other's company. In our increasingly connected but somehow isolated world, there's something nostalgic and appealing about that kind of simple, uncomplicated friendship. The show's relationship with its own past creates interesting layers of nostalgia. Characters will reference things that happened in earlier seasons as if they were childhood memories, creating this sense of shared history between the audience and the fictional characters. It's like having old friends who remember the same funny stories you do. As we near the end of our journey through Family Guy facts, consider how the show serves as a kind of modern folklore. These characters and their ridiculous adventures have become part of our shared cultural vocabulary. People quote Peter Griffin the way previous generations might have referenced folktales or classic literature. In a weird way, the Griffin family has become America's unofficial cartoon family, as recognizable as any real celebrity. The show's ending credits often feature the characters sitting on their couch, watching television just like the audience is doing. It creates this mirror effect, where fiction and reality blend together in a peaceful domestic scene. After all the chaos and adventure of each episode, everyone ends up exactly where they started, at home, together, ready to do it all again tomorrow. And that's perhaps the most comforting thing about Family Guy. No matter how crazy things get, no matter what disasters befall the Griffin family, they always end up back home, safe and sound, ready for the next adventure. It's a universe where problems are temporary, love is permanent, and there's always something to laugh about, even in the strangest situations. So as you drift off to sleep tonight, take comfort in knowing that somewhere in the animated town of Quahog, the Griffin family is probably getting into some ridiculous situation that will somehow work out just fine by morning. Sweet dreams. And remember, no matter how weird your own dreams get tonight, they probably won't be any stranger than a typical Family Guy episode. Sleep well, knowing that laughter truly is the best medicine. Even in cartoon form, the Griffin family will be there tomorrow, ready to entertain you with more wonderfully weird adventures whenever you need them. Good night. Picture this. You're lying in bed, scrolling through your phone at 2 a.m, and suddenly you're wondering about the most random Family Guy trivia that exists. Well, you've come to the right place, because tonight we're diving deep into the weirdest, most fascinating, and downright bizarre facts about everyone's favorite dysfunctional animated family, from secret voice actor connections to hidden Easter eggs that took fans decades to discover. These facts will blow your mind and give you plenty to think about as you drift off to sleep. Let's start with something that'll make you question everything you thought you knew about Peter Griffin's voice. Did you know that Seth MacFarlane actually based Peter's distinctive voice on a security guard he met while working at Hanna-Barbera? The guard had this thick New England accent that MacFarlane found absolutely hilarious, so he started imitating it during production meetings. What's even crazier is that this security guard had no idea he was the inspiration for one of television's most iconic cartoon characters, until years later when a coworker pointed it out to him. Imagine finding out that your voice became the foundation for a character watched by millions of people worldwide. Speaking of voices, here's something that might surprise you about Meg Griffin. Originally, Lacey Shaybird voiced Meg during the first season and part of the second season. But when she left to pursue other projects, Mila Kunis stepped in without anyone really noticing. The transition was so seamless that many longtime fans still don't realize there was ever a voice change. What makes this even more interesting is that Mila Kunis was initially hesitant to take the role because she felt bad about replacing another actress. Little did she know, she'd be voicing Meg for over 2 decades. Now let's talk about Stewie Griffin's accent, because there's a fascinating story behind that sophisticated British tone. Seth MacFarlane has revealed that Stewie's voice is actually inspired by Rex Harrison, the actor who played Professor Henry Higgins in the musical My Fair Lady. But here's the twist that most people don't know. MacFarlane originally wanted Stewie to gradually lose his accent as he got older, showing his American upbringing taking over. However, fans loved the accent so much that the creators decided to keep it permanently. This means Stewie's voice was supposed to be a temporary character trait that ended up becoming his most defining feature. Brian Griffin's character has one of the most unusual origin stories in animated television. Originally, Brian was going to be just a regular dog who couldn't talk. Seth MacFarlane only gave him the ability to speak because he needed a character who could serve as the voice of reason in the Griffin household. But here's what's really wild. Brian's personality is largely based on MacFarlane's own political views and personal struggles with alcoholism. In many ways, Brian serves as MacFarlane's animated alter ego, which explains why the character often breaks the fourth wall and seems more aware of the show's absurdity than other characters. The Griffin family's house has appeared in other Seth MacFarlane shows, but not in the way you might expect. The layout and design of the Griffin home was actually recycled and modified for use in American Dad as the Smith family residence. If you look closely at both houses, you'll notice they share remarkably similar floor plans, just with different decorations and color schemes. This was done to save time and money during production, but it created an unintentional connection between the two shows that eagle-eyed fans discovered years later. Cleveland Brown's spin-off show, The Cleveland Show, was originally supposed to be much darker in tone. The initial concept had Cleveland dealing with serious issues like racism, economic struggles, and family dysfunction in a more realistic way. However, Fox executives pushed for a lighter approach that would better match Family Guy's comedic style. This decision ultimately led to the show's cancellation after 4 seasons, as it never quite found its own identity separate from its parent series. Here's a fact that'll make you appreciate the show's attention to detail. Every single background character in Quahog has a name and backstory, even if they only appear for a few seconds. The writers maintain detailed files on hundreds of minor characters, including their occupations, family relationships, and personality traits. This level of world building is incredibly rare in animated comedies and helps explain why Quahog feels like a real town despite all its absurdities. The famous chicken fight scenes between Peter and Ernie the Giant Chicken weren't originally planned to become a recurring gag. The first fight scene was supposed to be a one-time joke, but the animation team had so much fun creating it that they kept extending the sequence. What was originally planned as a 30-second bit became a multi-minute epic battle that destroyed half of downtown Quahog. The positive fan reaction convinced the writers to bring back the chicken fights as a regular feature. Lois Griffin's piano playing isn't just for show. Alex Borstein, who voices Lois, is actually an accomplished pianist in real life. During recording sessions, she often plays the piano parts herself rather than having them added in post-production. This gives Lois's musical performances a more authentic feel and allows Borstein to better connect with the character during emotional scenes involving music. The show's timeline is intentionally confusing, and there's a specific reason for this creative choice. Seth MacFarlane wanted Family Guy to exist in a floating timeline where characters never age and current events can be referenced without dating the show. This means that episodes from 1999 and episodes from 2023 can both reference contemporary events as if they're happening simultaneously. It's a narrative technique borrowed from comic books, where characters like Batman have been fighting crime for decades without aging. Meg's unpopularity among her family and peers was originally supposed to be temporary. The writers planned to give her a character development arc where she eventually found her confidence and earned respect from others. However, the jokes about Meg being ignored and mistreated became so popular with audiences that the writers decided to make it a permanent aspect of her character. This decision has created one of the most consistent running gags in the show's history. The Family Guy writing room operates under a unique rule. Any writer can pitch a cutaway gag at any time, regardless of what's being discussed. This policy has led to some of the show's most memorable non-sequitur moments, including random historical events, celebrity parodies, and completely absurd scenarios. The writers keep a massive database of unused cutaway ideas that they can draw from whenever they need to fill time or add extra laughs to an episode. Here's something that might change how you watch the show. Many of the most quotable Peter Griffin lines were completely improvised by Seth MacFarlane during recording sessions. MacFarlane has a habit of going off script and trying different variations of lines until he finds something that makes the entire recording booth laugh. These spontaneous moments often end up being the most memorable parts of episodes, proving that sometimes the best comedy comes from pure improvisation. The character of Joe Swanson was created specifically to challenge stereotypes about people with disabilities. Rather than being defined by his wheelchair, Joe is portrayed as incredibly capable, often more physically impressive than his able-bodied friends. His character was inspired by real police officers and military veterans who continued serving their communities despite physical challenges. Writers worked closely with disability advocacy groups to ensure Joe's portrayal remains respectful and empowering. Family Guy holds a unique record in television history. It's the only show to be canceled twice by the same network and brought back both times due to fan demand. The first cancellation happened after the second season due to low ratings, but DVD sales and reruns on Adult Swim generated such a passionate fan base that Fox decided to revive it. When it was canceled again after the third season, the fan campaign was even stronger, leading to its permanent return and eventual status as one of Fox's longest-running shows. The show's animation style deliberately mimics classic cartoons from the 1960 seconds and 1970 seconds. Seth MacFarlane grew up watching shows like The Flintstones and The Jetsons, and he wanted Family Guy to have that same timeless cartoon aesthetic. This choice means that episodes from the early 2000s don't look dated compared to more recent episodes, helping the show maintain visual consistency across more than 2 decades of production. Stewie's sexual orientation has been a subject of fan speculation for years, and Seth MacFarlane has given conflicting answers about it intentionally. MacFarlane has stated that Stewie's sexuality is meant to be ambiguous and fluid, reflecting the complexity of human identity. This decision allows the character to work in various comedic contexts, without being confined to specific stereotypes or expectations. The Griffin family dog Brian was almost replaced permanently in 2013, but the decision was reversed after just 2 episodes due to overwhelming fan backlash. The writers killed off Brian and introduced a new dog named Vinny, planning to make this change permanent. However, the negative fan reaction was so intense that they quickly brought Brian back to life and wrote Vinny out of the show. This incident demonstrated just how attached audiences had become to the original characters. Here's a production secret that few fans know. Many of Family Guy's most elaborate action sequences are animated by the same team that works on major Hollywood animated films. When the show needs complex chase scenes, fight sequences, or musical numbers, they often hire freelance animators who normally work on Disney or Pixar movies. This explains why certain Family Guy sequences have surprisingly high production values compared to typical television animation. The town of Quahog is loosely based on several real New England locations, but it's primarily inspired by Cranston, Rhode Island, where Seth MacFarlane spent time during his childhood. Many of Quahog's landmarks and businesses are based on real places that MacFarlane remembered from his youth. The Drunken Clam Bar, for example, is inspired by a combination of several actual bars in the Providence area. Cleveland's voice actor Mike Henry made the unusual decision to step down from voicing the character in 2020, stating that a black character should be voiced by a black actor. This decision led to extensive recasting and rewriting to maintain character continuity while respecting the importance of authentic representation in voice acting. The transition process involved careful collaboration between Henry, the new voice actor, and the writing team to preserve Cleveland's established personality. Family Guy episodes often contain hidden references to other Seth MacFarlane projects, including American Dad and The Orville. These Easter eggs are scattered throughout episodes in the form of background details, character names, and brief visual gags. Finding all these connections has become a hobby for dedicated fans who maintain detailed databases of cross-references between MacFarlane's various shows. The show's musical numbers are often more complex than they appear on screen. Many of the songs featured in Family Guy episodes are full-length compositions that get edited down for television. Complete versions of these songs exist and are sometimes released as bonus content or special features. The writers and composers put significant effort into creating these musical sequences, often treating them as mini-musicals within the larger episode structure. Quagmire's famous giggity catchphrase was originally supposed to be used only once as a throwaway joke. Seth MacFarlane was experimenting with different ways to express the character's perverted excitement when he stumbled upon the giggity sound. The phrase became so associated with Quagmire that it's now impossible to imagine the character without it, showing how sometimes the most memorable elements of fictional characters emerge completely by accident. The Family Guy universe contains numerous characters who have appeared across multiple episodes spanning decades, creating one of the most extensive animated fictional communities on television. Background characters like the greased-up deaf guy, the evil monkey, and various Quahog residents have their own continuing storylines and character development arcs that careful viewers can track across seasons. These random facts barely scratch the surface of Family Guy's incredibly detailed fictional world. From voice acting secrets to animation techniques, From character development decisions to production challenges, every aspect of this show has fascinating stories behind it. As you drift off to sleep tonight, you can rest easy knowing that somewhere in Quahog, the Griffin family is probably getting into another ridiculous adventure that will entertain audiences for years to come. Sweet dreams, and remember, when life gets you down, at least you're not Meg Griffin trying to fit in at James Woods High School. Hey there, Night Owls and Family Guy fanatics. If you're settling in for some late-night entertainment and your brain is ready to drift off into dreamland, I've got the perfect collection of wild Family Guy facts that'll either help you doze off peacefully or keep you wide awake wondering how this show even exists. Tonight we're diving deep into the bizarre, chaotic, and absolutely insane world of everyone's favorite dysfunctional animated family. Let me start with something that'll blow your mind right off the bat. Did you know that Peter Griffin has an astronomical body count that would make serial killers jealous? We're talking thousands of deaths, and honestly, most of them happened in the most ridiculous ways possible. This isn't your typical cartoon violence where characters bounce back with cartoon physics. Peter has legitimately caused more destruction than some natural disasters. Speaking of Peter's mayhem, his very first kill happened way back in the second episode of the entire series. Remember that Roadrunner from Looney Tunes? Yeah, Peter straight up ran that bird down with his car, flattening it completely. What makes this even funnier is Peter's reaction afterward, casually asking if he hit an ostrich while the Roadrunner is clearly pancaked on his windshield. This moment basically set the tone for everything that would follow in the series. But here's where things get really wild. Peter once literally took over Death's job in the show, and with that cosmic responsibility came the power to kill people just by touching them. During his stint as the Grim Reaper, he accidentally killed 2 airplane pilots mid-flight simply because he forgot to wear mittens. Can you imagine being a passenger on that plane? Thankfully, actress Karen Black was somehow there to land the aircraft, or everyone would have died in that crash too. The hospital incidents are particularly disturbing when you think about them. Peter somehow convinced people to let him work as a doctor, which is terrifying enough on its own, but then he actually killed a patient during what should have been a routine procedure. The patient even thanked Peter for saving his life right before dying, which adds this darkly comedic layer that only Family Guy could pull off. Here's a fact that might help you sleep better or give you nightmares, depending on your perspective. Peter once worked as a babysitter and literally left a baby to drown in a bathtub. He casually walked away, leaving behind drain cleaner in case of clogs, soap next to a radio, and towels on the roof. The complete negligence and absurdity of this situation perfectly captures Peter's character. He's simultaneously well-meaning and catastrophically incompetent. The show took Peter's violence to cinematic levels during various parody episodes. When they did their Kill Bill homage, Peter went full samurai warrior mode, engaging in what can only be described as a sword-fighting bloodbath. The choreography was surprisingly well animated for a show that usually relies on simple character movements, and Peter managed to take down 15 opponents all by himself in pure martial arts mayhem. Then there's Peter's brief career as a superhero parody called Red Stool, which was obviously their take on Deadpool. The name comes from the fact that his cancer specifically affected his rear end because, of course, Family Guy would go there. As Red Stool, Peter maintained Deadpool's tendency for extreme violence, adding several more bodies to his ever-growing count while cracking inappropriate jokes the entire time. The Walter White parody deserves special mention because it perfectly captured the essence of Breaking Bad while maintaining Family Guy's signature chaos. Peter as Heisenberg was just as dangerous as the original, dropping bodies left and right while somehow making it comedically absurd rather than genuinely threatening. The transformation from bumbling father to calculating criminal mastermind was surprisingly well executed for a show known more for cutaway gags than character development. But perhaps the most disturbing aspect of Peter's violence is how it affects his own family. He once accidentally killed his entire family through carbon monoxide poisoning, and his reaction was essentially wondering if his day's work was worth it. Sure, they all came back in the next episode because cartoon logic, but the casual way Peter processes causing his loved ones' deaths is genuinely unsettling when you think about it too deeply. The fight scenes with Ernie the Giant Chicken are legendary among Family Guy fans, and for good reason. These battles have spanned multiple episodes and caused more collateral damage than most action movies. They've fought in airports, construction sites, moving trains, and even hijacked time machines to battle across different historical periods. The destruction they cause is absolutely massive, with buildings collapsing, vehicles exploding, and innocent bystanders getting caught in their ridiculous feud. What makes the chicken fights even more absurd is that they started over an expired coupon. Think about that for a moment. These two characters have caused thousands of deaths, millions of dollars in property damage, and untold chaos across multiple dimensions, all because of a disagreement about a coupon's validity. It's the perfect example of Family Guy's ability to take tiny conflicts and escalate them to world-ending proportions. The time travel elements in their fights add another layer of complexity and destruction. When Peter and Ernie crash through different time periods, they're not just affecting the present day, they're literally altering history itself. The poor driver of that futuristic train they destroyed was probably just trying to get to work in his cyberpunk timeline. And suddenly, he's vaporized because two idiots from the early 21st century decided to continue their grocery store dispute across the space-time continuum. Here's something that might surprise you. Peter has actually caused more deaths through his various acts of terrorism, albeit usually accidental ones. When he befriended a terrorist named Mahmoud, Peter was completely oblivious to what was happening. All he cared about was the attention and perks of his new friendship. When Mahmoud gave him what Peter thought was a phone, he kept trying to use it to make calls, not realizing it was actually a bomb detonator. The explosions that resulted from Peter's innocent phone calls were catastrophic. Each time he tried to dial Mahmoud, another building would explode somewhere in the city. The fact that Peter remained completely clueless about what was happening makes it both hilarious and terrifying. Even when the gang managed to stop Mahmoud's planned attack on a bridge, Peter still had that detonator and used it again while trying to call a restaurant for reservations. The crossover episode with The Simpsons showcased Peter's destructive capabilities on an even grander scale. His fight with Homer Simpson leveled entire city blocks and resulted in mass casualties that would normally be associated with natural disasters or military conflicts. The two fathers' brawl started over Peter insulting The Simpsons show, which escalated into a city-destroying conflict that somehow ended with both characters gaining superpowers from radioactive waste. One particularly disturbing sequence involved Peter's brief stint as a high school student, where he arranged for a school shooting to get revenge on popular kids who ignored him. Even though he called it off at the last minute, the attack still went through, and the screams and gunshots in the background suggest multiple casualties among innocent children. This episode aired during a time when such events were unfortunately becoming more common in real life, making Peter's involvement even more unsettling. Peter's various explosions of hospitals deserve special mention for their sheer scale of destruction. When he disagreed with vaccines, he dressed as the Joker and blew up an entire medical facility just to prevent Stewie from getting a shot. The explosion was massive enough to level the building and likely killed dozens of patients, doctors, nurses, and staff members who were just trying to provide health care. But he didn't stop there. Peter later destroyed a children's hospital in another equally senseless act of destruction. The casual way the show presents these incidents, with Peter treating the explosions like minor inconveniences rather than mass casualty events, perfectly captures the dark comedy that Family Guy specializes in. It's simultaneously hilarious and deeply disturbing. The missile incidents showcase Peter's ability to cause destruction on a military scale. During his fight with President Trump, Peter's head got slammed onto a big red button that launched multiple missiles. Each missile likely killed hundreds of people in massive explosions, turning what started as a personal dispute into an international incident with catastrophic consequences. What's particularly interesting about Peter's character is how the show manages to make him sympathetic despite his astronomical body count. He's never intentionally malicious. He's just incredibly stupid and impulsive with access to dangerous situations. This combination makes him simultaneously lovable and terrifying, which is probably why the character has remained popular for over 2 decades. The physics of Peter's destruction often defy logic, even by cartoon standards. When he and Ernie crashed that Ferris wheel, it rolled through the city like a massive wheel of death, flattening everything in its path. The scale of destruction was apocalyptic, but it was presented with such absurd cartoon logic that viewers could laugh at it rather than being horrified by the implications. Peter's various career changes always seem to result in multiple casualties. Whether he's working as a doctor, babysitter, death himself, or any other profession, people end up dying as a direct result of his incompetence. It's actually impressive how consistently dangerous he is across all walks of life. There's literally no job safe enough for Peter Griffin to perform without causing fatalities. The show's commitment to continuity regarding Peter's violence is surprisingly strong for a series that usually ignores consequences. Characters who die in one episode rarely come back, unless there's a specific plot reason, and the destruction Peter causes often gets referenced in later episodes. This attention to detail makes his actions feel more impactful than typical cartoon violence. Here's a fun sleeping fact. The total estimated death toll directly caused by Peter Griffin throughout the series is approaching 3,000 people. That number includes direct kills, collateral damage from his fights, explosions he's caused, and various accidents resulting from his stupidity. To put that in perspective, Peter has personally caused more deaths than many historical disasters. The international incidents Peter has triggered would realistically make him one of the most wanted criminals on the planet. He's blown up bridges, destroyed government buildings, launched military missiles, and caused diplomatic crises with multiple countries. Yet somehow he continues living his normal suburban life without any legal consequences, which is perhaps the most unrealistic aspect of a show featuring a talking baby and a martini-drinking dog. As you drift off to sleep tonight, remember that somewhere in the Family Guy universe, Peter Griffin is probably causing another catastrophe that will add to his ever-growing body count. Sweet dreams, and maybe avoid any neighborhoods where middle-aged men are having disputes with large poultry. In the world of Family Guy, such conflicts have a tendency to escalate into city-leveling disasters that make natural catastrophes look like minor inconveniences. The beautiful absurdity of Peter's character is that despite being responsible for more destruction than most fictional supervillains, he's still somehow the protagonist we're supposed to root for. That's the magic of Family Guy, taking the most inappropriate situations and making them laugh out loud funny through sheer audacity and perfect comedic timing. Now close your eyes and let these wonderfully bizarre facts carry you off into dreamland, where hopefully giant chickens and expired coupons can't hurt you.